I am calling to order the meeting, City of Salem Budget Committee for April the 17th, 2024. And can the recorder please call the roll?
Member Belicheks?
Present.
Member Cohen?
Present.
Member Allen?
Here.
Member Manville?
Here.
Member Vieira Brandel?
Present.
Member Stapleton is absent. Member Phillips?
Here.
Member Gwen? Member Gonzalez is absent. Member Julie Hoy? Member Nordyke?
Present.
Member Varney?
Here.
Member Chris Hoy?
Here.
Member Dixon?
Here.
Member Curtis?
Here.
Member Gayer?
Here.
Vice Chair Nishioka? Here. Chair Brown?
Present. You please join me for Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, and good evening to all of our members. Happy Wednesday. It's good to see all your bright and shining faces. And for those who have yet to join us, we may have a couple late arrivals. And to everyone else, thank you for being present tonight. There are a couple things I would just like to share with our members and, of course, those of us who are visiting with us tonight. Just to kind of give you a lay of the land, before we get into the items of the agenda, I just want to take a moment, make sure that everyone kind of realizes where they're at. It's always good to remember how we can have civil discourse, because we realize in times like these, we can get very overly animated and whatnot, and so we just want to remind ourselves of how we can be very respectful and encouraging to all the voices that are in the space. For those of you who know me, I'm a firm believer to making sure that every voice can be heard and every face can be recognized and people can be affirmed in their identities, because we're all in this together. How many of you guys would agree with that? Just checking, make sure we're in the right place. One of the first things we're going to do tonight, we're going to approve the additions on the agenda, and then we're going to move into public comment. And after we approve the minutes, we're going to hear some information items. Followed by that, we'll have some presentations by our city manager and also some presentations for two of our staff members. If by chance this meeting goes late, for those of us who have been in this setting before, these meetings can go late. If we happen to get to the 10 o'clock hour, at the 10 o'clock hour, at that particular time, I will need a motion from someone to where we can continue our discussion. For those of us can recall, there have been some times we've been in these halls to 11:30 or midnight. And for all of our guests, you're welcome to stay with us. Please do. Hopefully you brought some snacks. I also want to take a moment to recognize those individuals that may be a part of our revenue task force. If you're here, we definitely want to thank you for your service, your commitment. Thank you to the staff that's here, and for those individuals that are keeping us safe, all of our first responders that may be in this room. If you're in a uniform, we definitely thank you for being here. We appreciate you looking out for us. And now to one of our first actions of the night. We have some additions to the agenda, which will include written testimony, a staff report, and could I have a motion to approve the additions to the agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion from Member Nordyke. And can I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Member Dixon. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand. Any opposed? Nay. Seeing none, the motion passes. We're going to move into public testimony. We have some that are here in the room, in the space with us physically, and also virtually. They'll be joining us through Zoom. For members of the public who are here, if you have signed to testify, please provide your name, your neighborhood, and the ward that you live in. You will have 3 minutes to testify, 3 minutes. If you look in that direction, you'll see 2 microphones. You'll have 3 minutes, and you'll talk from there. If you are representing a group, you will be provided 5 minutes. When you see blinking yellow light, it will appear with, let you know that's 1 minute you have left. And when your time has expired, it will turn red. And then if you're still talking after it turns red, you will hear my voice. And my voice will say, it's red, thank you, next. Just to make sure everybody can get to be heard tonight. And so what I'm going to do for public testimony, I'm going to call your name, and I'll probably do it in twos, meaning whoever is first, you go ahead and pick up where you would like to talk, and then that second person, you go ahead and you stand at the opposite microphone. Does it make sense to everyone? That way we can just keep the conversation going. And when you do get ready to talk, we have some members on the side of you, just in case if you don't know what button to push. You'll see on the microphone there's a button to push, and you'll know what color it is. Like this is green right here. That tells me that it's off. Now it's back on. And if for some reason you get confused, we have member Dixon. He'll help you from right there, and also member Geyer right over here.
There are people in the room who weren't able to sign up, so when we get done with the list, you could just announce that people can come up and you still want to testify. What's your time?
Perfect, perfect. And by chance, if there are some individuals that are here that are not on my list, I will give you the opportunity to talk as well. So, well, let's begin with Mr. Ryan Erickson Kulas. And right behind him, it would be Senator Deb Patterson. Thank you. And it'll be, you say your name, your neighborhood, and your ward.
My name is Ryan Erickson Kulas from the Highland neighborhood in Ward 1. I'm here to voice my strong opposition against the proposed cuts to the Salem library system, which threaten our community's educational and economic future. Salem's library funding is alarmingly low, ranked 112th out of 136 in Oregon, with a per-person spend of about $33. Despite this, our library demands remained high. If we proceed with these proposed cuts, our city, which serves approximately 180,000 people, would see library services comparable to cities of merely 3,000 people. This is a stark reduction that is not only shameful, but also a clear indication of misplaced priorities. It's particularly contradictory and discouraging that we are recognizing National Library Workers' Day on April 8th only to consider cuts that would undermine our staff and services. These cuts are not just numbers on a budget sheet. They represent a severe impact on our community, especially on our most vulnerable populations. These cuts would disproportionately impact our bilingual Spanish-speaking staff, exacerbating racial and economic disparities in our city, where 25% of residents are Spanish speakers. This is not just a reduction in personnel, but a direct blow to racial equity and access. In 2021, the Oregon Office of Economic Analysis found Hispanic and Latino households made over 10% less income than their white counterparts. Additionally, last year, the state's Higher Education Coordinating Commission found the educational attainment of Oregon's adults still varies widely by race and ethnicity, with 57% of white adults having credentials of some sort compared to just 35% of Latinos. These gaps will only be exacerbated by cutting library services. Studies have consistently shown that access to libraries significantly boosts students' academic performance and lifelong learning opportunities. Moreover, public libraries are a critical access point for job seekers, offering resume workshops, internet access, and job application assistance. These services are essentially crucial in an economy that increasingly demands digital literacy and online presence. Public libraries play a crucial role in equalizing access to information and resources, particularly for those without home broadband internet, a situation affecting 8% of Oregon households, which will only increase with the ending of the federal funding of the Affordable Connectivity Program this month. Cutting library services now is counterproductive. It widens social and economic inequalities and undercuts our community's potential. It is clear that public libraries contribute not only to the individual educational outcomes, but also to broader economic development and social equity. I appreciate Mayor Hoy's short-term funding proposal, which using implementing transient occupancy tax, but we need a sustainable solution like a dedicated library taxing district to prevent future financial instability. I urge you as stewards of our community to reconsider these cuts and invest in our libraries as an essential community asset. Libraries are not just about books, they are a vital community hub that promotes health, education, social support, and more. Let's not diminish our city's potential by undermining one of its most fundamental institutions. Thank you for your attention to this critical matter.
And one final thing. You know what I'm going to say. I appreciate your applause. If we have to do that after every person, we'll be here till midnight. So what I'm going to encourage you to do, you can do this, do your heart, whatever is wonderful for you, but I'm going to ask that you just refrain from that applause, please. Senator Patterson, you're next.
Good evening, Dr. Brown. I'm Deb Patterson. I'm a resident of Ward 7. I'm also a state senator representing Senate District 10, which includes South and West Salem and part of Four Corners, as well as Monmouth and Independence. I'm here for two reasons tonight, briefly, both related to the Salem Public Library. First, I want to thank Mayor Hoy, Councilor Nishioka, Councilor Varney, Councilor Nordyke, Councilor Gwynn, and all those on the committee who are working on a solution to help keep the library open without any further cuts. In the Senate Healthcare Committee, which I chair, we've learned of the vital link between literacy and health. We must find ways to keep the library open enough hours to accommodate families who are home with children during the day. I see them at the library. Working families who come after work, I see them then. Students who need access to the library in the early evening after they're done with their after-school activities. We also must accommodate those who can only access the library on weekends and keep services available for seniors and other vulnerable adults. The second reason I'm here is to pledge that I will continue to work with your leadership to look for funds at the state level as well. There are many pressing needs, and so thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Next, we will have Whitney Hines and Zoe Harper. And when you come to the podium, please say your name, and you're free to say your neighborhood or your ward. And followed by Whitney Hines and Zoe Harper, it will be Kelsey LeMay and Anthony LeMay, if I'm saying that correct. You will follow these two. Whitney Hines.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Hoy, council members, committee members, and community members. My name is Whitney Hines, and I'm a resident of Salem, Oregon, Ward 1, Grant neighborhood. I am an educator for the school district and the mother of 3 young children whom my husband and I plan to raise in Salem, Oregon. 4 years ago, we made the decision to move back to our hometown after spending 12 years living in cities and states across the country. We chose to plant roots in Salem, where we were both raised and where we saw the value in the community here. All of this is to say that I am invested in this city. I chose this city, and my future is in this city. I'm speaking tonight regarding the future of the Salem Public Library. Like so many others, I spent countless hours in the public library as a child, one of the few places that was available to me and my friends, come rain or shine. Living in extreme poverty with limited resources and rarely present parents, the public library offered me warmth, safety, access to learning, and comfort. Like so many others, I cherish the invaluable resources our library provides. Members can learn about any topic their heart desires, engage in a wide range of activities, build confidence, grow skills, exercise imagination, and cultivate a community of educated, passionate, and valuable citizens. Public libraries are the bedrock of society. Salem Public Library offers a safe place for inquisitive minds to ask questions and seek answers. It is one of few places that is accessible to people of all ages, socioeconomic status, and mobility. It is the bridge between what our children's education can offer and what they deserve. I am disheartened by the mere consideration to reduce hours and access, or to go as far as to even close the library completely, as evidenced in the fiscal year 2025 option 3, showing no reductions to public safety, as well as the complete closure of the library. Performing a brief online search, it is easy to find that Salem tax dollars have contributed to paying over $4,120,000 in Salem Police Department misconduct settlements in recent years, and that is just what I have found. It is logical to assume that there is surely more. The amount paid in just a few settlements to cover the actions of those who form part of our public safety unit is nearly half of the budget needed to maintain our public library. However, the same preliminary online research shows that our library has resulted in $0 paid in settlements with taxpayer money. When our tax dollars not only contribute to funding the police department, but also to pay the settlements for excessive force, wrongful arrest, and sexual misconduct lawsuits, then we deserve to have a say in what we believe as a community is an investment, fully funding our public library. Please preserve access to information, promote community growth, and put our money where it belongs and where it makes a measurable difference. I urge you to consider our city's future, longevity, and livability. I urge you to take action to show care for creating a welcoming and livable community. Please invest in our Salem Public Library.
Thank you. Zoe Harper.
Zoe Harper. I live in Ward 4. No more cuts to our library, please. I learned to read myself before kindergarten, and I love reading books. It's one of my favorite things to do. I just love this library. Thank you.
Thank you. We can definitely clap for someone that's at that height. That's probably a future counselor. Kelsey and Anthony LeMay.
Okay. Hello, my name is Kelsey Lamb, Ward 3. I work for the Salem Public Library, but I am not one of the planned reductions. The Salem Public Library, SPL, is an essential and deeply loved community service, yet faces severe cuts for the upcoming fiscal year, despite the 2024 fiscal year cuts that reduced library staff by about 20%, despite already being severely underfunded and understaffed compared to all other comparable Oregon libraries, and despite that the library only accounted for about 3.5% of the budget by department for fiscal year 2024. The plan proposed to the Budget Committee suggests removing an additional 7.25 positions from the library, which accounts for about 29% of the total financial cuts being made. Why should a department using 3.5% of the budget be taking almost a third of the total budget reductions? Of the 7.25 FTE cuts, 6 of these cuts will result in library staff who have dedicated their lives to serving this community being laid off. I had never worked with a whole team so dedicated, customer-focused, collaborative, and hardworking as SPL. The city would lose a huge asset by laying off these library staff, and that is without considering the ramifications to eliminating our Spanish-speaking, community-focused activities and services to our community of almost 30% Spanish speakers. The additional cuts will reduce library staffing to similar levels of the Tillamook County Library, which has a population 15% of the size of Salem. The West Salem branch will close as indicated by the 2025 budget report, and the library will be reduced to likely 25 to 30 open hours per week, which is similar to rural libraries with populations under 1,000. People throughout the Tri-County area will suffer from these proposed cuts due to SPL consisting of the majority of the CCRLS Library Consortium, which serves Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties. If we have money to subsidy from the general fund to the airport fund and to create 5 new positions from the general fund for fiscal year 2025, then we should be able to find a solution for the library. Please support the library to continue serving the Spanish-speaking community, to provide digital information access to the over 16% of the Marion County residents without internet connection, to provide literacy programs and services to children. 68% of Salem Kaiser children cannot read proficiently as of 2023, to provide a safe space for everyone, and all of the other amazing services available through the library. People say libraries are magic, but the truth is library staff are the magic. The community is speaking out in the support of the library by commenting on all social media platforms for posts and news articles regarding the library. Over 100 people came out to a library support rally where hundreds of cars honked in support of the library. People are writing and speaking to City Council, and at the Revenue Task Force Town Hall, people showcase support for the library through many comments and overfilling boxes with stickers to show their support for funding the library. I implore the Budget Committee to suggest and City Council to vote for a solution that eliminates library cuts. Thank you.
Mr. Anthony Lane.
Hello, my name is Anthony Lamb. I live in Ward 3. I'm here today to talk about the 2025 fiscal budget. Upon reading this document, I found that the city manager was suggesting closing West Salem branch, reducing library hours of operation and the staff that work there, in an attempt to balance the budget. At the same time, adding more positions to other departments. This proposed budget makes it seem as though the city doesn't see the library as an essential service, which it is. And how can the city say that they're wanting to be transparent and operate with a good governance, at the same time reducing our availability to newspapers and other articles of reading that we can actually educate ourselves on what's happening? Sorry. Yeah, I'll just skip everything else.
Take your time.
If the general fund is used to pay for FTE positions, then I would rather see support funds being to support keeping the positions that are currently being held by people, coming from other places in the budget. This will allow Salem to maintain the current operations and allow people who are already employed from make sure they don't lose their jobs. This temporary deferral of the budget could be refunded later on once the Revenue Task Force comes up with a solution to increase how much funding we get through whatever means. I am also in support of Mayor Hoy's proposed motion and urge the Budget Committee to challenge the proposed budget and request that the city staff find an option that does not include cutting library services. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Christy Kemper-Hodge, Irene Longaker, followed by Rob Kianomich and Victoria Tim.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Christy Kemper-Hodge, a resident in Ward 6 and also the Teen Services Librarian at Salem Public Library. I did not prepare notes or statistics. I just wanted to come and share with you what I have learned. As you may know, last week was National Library Week. It was also the week that 6 of my colleagues learned that their jobs will be lost if the city manager's proposed budget goes through and the proposed library cuts happen. At least 2 of those staff are in this room right now. So thank you for coming out. While I was helping to prepare for celebrating our library staff, I needed a head count of how many people work for the library, and these are our regular FTE scheduled non-on-call staff. There are 37. 37. We need probably at least twice that many to be able to sustain our services. That is 37 staff people who work in our library. If you've been in that building, you know how large it is. You know the size of this community. 5 of the 6 positions that are listed for cuts are bilingual, bicultural staff people, including 2 bilingual, bicultural librarians are only ones. So as everyone was saying, the inequities of what that then, the effect that has on our community is huge. I also wanted to say, of those 37 staff, 4 are management positions. And don't get me wrong, these managers are the best I've ever had in a library, and they are willing and able to work any service desk, which is highly commendable and not something I have seen in other libraries. But their jobs are focused on other things because that's what they need to do. So that brings us to 33 staff that are dedicated frontline working staff. Now, what you also need to know is we have 3 additional support staff. We have an admin assistant who also has a very important job. We have a security person who also has a very important job, and we have an all-time custodian. These people's work is integral. Oh, excuse me, 4. We also have an IT person. So that brings us down to 29 people who work at the library who are dedicated staff to serving service desks, ordering and preparing materials, getting materials checked in and on the shelves, and just buying our materials. I just can't emphasize enough how you cannot run this library with 29 individuals. Additionally, the other losses that we are facing with this budget cut as proposed are all of our on-call staff. So that means that when we have 10 people who are out sick, as has happened, we now have 19 people to staff the library. Thank you.
Ms. Irene?
Yes, I'm Irene Longacre, and I reside at 975 High Street, Southeast, here in Salem. And essentially, I just wanted to go on record to say that I'm against any of this proposed budget cuts for the library. I think it's been said very well by others how important the library is to this community. So thank you.
Next, we'll have Rob Kianomich and Victoria Tim.
Chairman Brown and members of the committee, thanks for hearing us tonight. My name's Rob Kimmick. I live in Ward 2. I wanted to say that our library provides a great variety of valuable resources that are important to the health, safety, and education of our city. For example, the library materials and youth services that the library provides are good complements to the education in our city. I would like resources such as these to be fully funded in the budget for the next fiscal year. I would like notices of layoffs in July to the 3 librarians and over a dozen other library workers to be withdrawn, allowing these library staff to keep their jobs. I want no further cuts to the library budget. I'm a frequent patron of the newly renovated main branch of the library. I was among many who were very happy to see the good renovation that had been done to that building. It is a point of pride to this city in appearance and in the services it provides. It is worthy of increased support over the years to come. Thank you.
Victoria Tim.
Hello, my name is Victoria Tim. I'm represented by Julie Hoy in Ward 6, and I'm from Northeast Salem. I am from Salem. I've been here my whole life, and I grew up impoverished. And we didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't have a lot of opportunities. And my mom brought me to the library and gave me a library card. And ever since then, ever since I was 5, I've been going to the library ever since. And the librarians might recognize me as a frequent patron. Now, one thing I love about our country is that we're a democracy. And the pillar of democracy is free information. And now in modern times, newspapers are dying. The internet has condensed into this, frankly, blob of misinformation. And the library, though, that is one thing that is consistent in providing free information to make sure that our democracy can survive. Now, we are facing cuts which frankly do not make any sense. If my numbers are correct, of course I don't have notes, but if my numbers are correct, the police their budget is being increased by 2%, or maybe it's 3%. Either way, the library, something that takes up such a small percentage of the pie, making up the majority of the cuts, frankly, that doesn't make me think that you guys think it's very essential. And to me, I know that the library is essential, and without it, I don't think Salem is a place that I would want to live. I don't have the opportunity. I don't have the chance to leave if you guys get rid of the library. I don't have the funds to make up for all the time that I will lose if the library is cut, if the library is gone. So what I propose to you is find another way. It's possible. It can be done. And the fact that it's not even being considered is maddening. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope you listen to all of us and don't cut the library.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Jennifer Y. Levy-Peck, followed by Cecilia O'Meara, and then followed by Rachel Atkinson and Alyssa Kokenis.
Mr. Chair, if I could interrupt for just 1 second. If we could ask the members of the public who are speaking to maybe slow down just a bit. Our ASL interpreters are having a difficult time keeping up with the really rapid language. So if you could slow down just a little bit, we would really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Take your time.
She can go first. Hello, my name is Jennifer Levy-Peck. I'm a resident of Ward 4, and I moved to Salem in 2020, and one of the first things I did when I came down here house hunting was go look for the library. It was very important to me. I'm an elder, which I prefer to senior citizen, and that means I've seen a few things in my lifetime. Libraries have been important to me since I was a little kid, and I've seen how important they are to communities. They're a very important part of any kind of vital, thriving community. They're some of the few public spaces that still welcome everyone. They promote knowledge, literacy, a sense of connection, and the pure joy of reading and learning. I love hearing the testimony from the little girl who spoke. Libraries, for most of us, hold a place in our heart. They offer children and teens a gateway to the world. We may have difficulty affording library services, but the truth is we can't afford to not have our libraries be accessible and available to the people of Salem. There's something very, very wrong with a process that says that libraries are expendable and that they're not a priority. We need to have our libraries. We should be increasing services and hours and not decreasing them, not cutting them. I urge you to keep focused on the priorities that really matter for our community, for our city. Thank you.
Next.
Hi, my name is Cecilia O'Meara, and I live in Ward 1, Highland, and I am against the cuts. I'm against closing the library, and I don't have all these facts and figures and whatever, but all I know is that I've lived in the city, I think, about 12, 14 years. And the one thing that I did was I got a library card right away. I have lived all across the country and gotten library cards. And I've been a member of a library since I was 10. And I'm in my 60s, even though it doesn't look like it. But anyway, I love the library. I love that you can just come in and pick up books, read it, and all these other people, kids and whatever, can get involved in the library and expand their minds and make the world a better place because they know things. And a person that doesn't know things is, just doesn't know things, because I don't know a lot of things. But anyway, it is, to me, a travesty that the city is even considering closing the library and reducing hours and making other things more priority than the library. And I was very sad when the library hours were cut. And I feel sorry for the people that work and want to go to a library and they can't because it's closed. And even the kids. And but anyway, I love the library, and I really don't want it to close. And it would make me very sad, because I like the city. It's not a city I thought I was going to stay in forever, but it seems like it. And so, and part of that is the library. And so please don't don't close the library, because a lot of people will benefit from it now, tomorrow, next year, and in the years to come. But if you close it now, it'll be harder to get it started again. And plus, the citizens of Salem deserve a library. The library has been going on since Benjamin Franklin, and I don't think he would like to hear what the city of Salem wants to do to this library as closing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also waiting in queue, I'll go ahead and call up Wyatt Williams and Hannah Bostrom. Rachel and Alyssa, are you here?
Alyssa was next. Oh, go ahead. Hi there, my name is Rachel Atchison. I live in Morningside, which is in Ward 3, and I didn't prepare any remarks, but I just wanted to say that I was disappointed to see that the Budget Committee's choices were to cut the library a little, to cut the library a lot, or to like take away with the library, and that just seems like the options were not good. And comments that the library was the discretionary item in the budget were also very distressing to me. I really didn't like to hear that. So I just wanted to say that. I do appreciate Mayor Hoy, your attempt to find funding for the upcoming year. That was good news. But I also hope that we pay attention and don't just kick the can down the road, and that we do find a dedicated funding source over the next year. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, Mayor Hoy, the Budget Committee, and the City Manager, who makes significantly more than I do as a Senior Library Assistant. So my name is Alyssa Kokinis. I'm a resident of Ward 2, and as I said, I'm a Senior Library Assistant at Salem Public Library. Last week, after National Library Workers' Day, 6 of my colleagues, full-time staff members, were notified that their positions may be eliminated come July 1st, as well as our on-call library clerks. Not all of these positions are new hires either. These staff are not just numbers in a budget. They are people. They are librarians, library assistants, and clerks. 5 of the proposed cuts are Spanish speakers who excellently serve our Spanish-speaking community here in Salem. Did you know that 1 out of every 4 residents of Salem is a Spanish-speaking citizen? If 5 of our 6 potentially eliminated positions are Spanish speakers, 2 of whom are librarians, then we can maybe say goodbye to dedicated staff for Spanish language programming like Hora de Cuentos, Salem Reads events, our Community Ofrenda, Lateria, and other programming dedicated to celebrating the multiculturalism of Salem. The other proposed cut is another librarian who is also our union steward, who started up a program titled Programs for Accessible Learning, a program that is dedicated to adults with developmental disabilities and delays. This librarian saw a need upon seeing this group of people frequently patronize the library, and decided to move forward with pitching this program, because the library is an inclusive space where everyone is welcome. In addition, all of these affected staff provide great customer service in both English and Spanish at the desks, on the phone, through email, whether it's a dedicated reference question or a simple account remedy. The library assistants and clerks on the chopping block regularly help keep circulation moving at its current pace by shelving, pulling books for holds, and other dedicated projects. The clerks, though on call, are often asked to come in when career staff are out sick or on vacation so that the library can still operate. With 8 less full-time staff and none of our library clerks, how will the remaining staff ever be able to take a vacation or a sick day without the library shutting down for the day? What does minimal operations look like to the city and the community? Do you want longer wait times at the desk? Us not answering the phone as often? Drowning under the weight of all the circulated items needing to be processed in shelves? For many months now, library staff, under the threat of further cuts to our jobs, have continually showed up to do our work, no matter who you are. If you're houseless, if you're a child, if you're a teen trying to find a safe place to be. To conclude, I would like to pose a few questions. I did pose these last week at an all-staff meeting, but felt I didn't receive suitable answers. Number 1, can the city manager explain the disproportionate cuts to the library compared to other city departments in your fiscal year 2025 budget? And when 5 of the 6 positions proposed are Spanish speakers, what is your DEI initiative? Thank you.
Waiting in queue will be Beth Freelander and Kayla Rigsby.
Chair Brown, Mayor Hoy, City Manager Staley, councilors. For the record, my name is Wyatt Williams. I live in the Sunny Slope neighborhood, Ward 7. It's disheartening to hear the testimony about the library and the proposed cuts. My 3rd grader just reached 100 books herself, over 90% of the books she got from the library. Very proud dad, but I'm here to testify on another topic. Please fund the Community Services Park and Recreation budget to an appropriate level to hold the annual Salem Kids Relay Race, over 40-year tradition of engaging thousands of Salem's K-12 students in a fun, active Saturday of relay races. Last year, over 1,400 students participated, and thousands of family members came to watch at Willamette University Charles Bowles Track in Bush Park. According to reports, the cost to the city to run this event is $30,000. That equals about $21 invested per kid per year, the dividends of which far outpace the costs. I brought some pictures. I don't know if it's appropriate to show these. May I?
Go right ahead.
My kid goes to a small private school, Capital Christian, which is also on Liberty Street, Marion Liberty, just downtown, a few blocks. This gives our kids an opportunity to compete against public schools. This event doesn't take up any outside time from school, so it provides opportunity for parents who might not be able to shuttle their kids around after school. It's a one-day event, and if you can see, there are thousands of people in the audience here jumping and cheering for 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th graders in our school. This little girl right here, her self-esteem just got boosted so high because she got a 3rd place medal. And if you could see her smile on her face, it's $1 million. Funding local youth sports programs is crucial for several reasons. Health and fitness. Participation in sports promotes physical activity and helps combat the sedentary lifestyle. By investing in local youth sports, we invest in the health and well-being of our young people. Character development. Sports teach valuable life skills such as teamwork, leadership, discipline. By supporting youth sports, we help shape the next generation of responsible, resilient citizens. Community building. Youth sports programs bring together children and families from diverse backgrounds, fostering a sense of community and belonging. Academic performance. Research has shown that students who participate in sports tend to perform better academically. Crime prevention. Engaging young people in constructive activities like sports reduces the likelihood of them engaging in delinquent behavior. Long-term benefits. Investing in youth sports, long-term benefits for society as a whole. Overall funding local youth sports program is not just an expenditure, but an investment in the well-being, development, and future success of our young people and our communities. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, Mayor Hoy, Chairman Brown, and the Budget Committee members. My name is Hannah Bostrom. I live in Ward 8, and I'm also a librarian with the Salem Public Library and have been for the last 4.5 years. Last week, I received notice that my position may be going away in June. Obviously, this was devastating to hear. Okay. Finding out which positions were selected to possibly be cut was hard news for the whole organization, as well as myself. I'm clearly struggling. And although we knew that we were moving towards this, it's incredibly hard to know what our future is going to look like now. Losing a significant portion of our staff will leave a lasting impact to the morale. Remaining staff will have to struggle through the pain of losing people they care deeply about and who have been working with them for years, all while trying to maintain good service to our community that we care so much about. With the staffing shortage, there will be limited ability, as Alyssa said, for staff to take time off, and burnout will be greatly accelerated. Moving forward with these cuts will leave the library with no union steward, no on-call staff, and removes 5 of our Spanish-speaking staff members. And I want to point out that while we will still have Spanish-speaking staff members, for our Spanish-speaking staff, our Spanish language programs would cease since we are cutting the specific people who provide those. And it is not easy to build up an attendance base for programs in general, but it is especially hard for programs serving our Spanish community. My coworkers have worked hard to develop community connections and programs that make a significant impact. And all of our on-call staff bring enthusiasm to their work and provide flexibility to career staff to offer these special services to the community. Losing these staff would make the day-to-day processes hard for those who stay, and each person who leaves will cause a ripple effect in the organization. Beyond looking at the individuals who will be affected by this current budget proposal, I ask that you consider what we're doing to our community as a whole.
Thank you. Waiting in the queue will be Megan Adams. Next.
Hi, I'm Beth Freelander, and I live in Ward 3. I'm here to echo the support for the library and implore you to reconsider any cuts to the library. I didn't make a lot of notes before I came here, but one thing I did notice while it's here is the vision that's up on the board. And that is to have a vibrant community that is welcoming to all. And I can't think of an institution that embodies that more than our public library. And I look at the mission that Salem has set out to provide quality services that enrich the lives of present and future residents. That is exactly what the library does in our community. So I ask you to take seriously the vision that you set out and work on that mission, and that means that there can't be more cuts to the library. That's unacceptable. It's antithetical to what Salem says it's about. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Kayla Rigsby. I'm from Ward 3, and I've lived in Salem my whole life. I've gone to the library my whole life. When I was a teenager, I volunteered, and I was part of the Teen Advisory Board in high school. When I was in college, I volunteered, and now I don't anymore because it's already been cut. I work Monday through Friday, and I also work at a credit union that's open Saturdays. I cannot go to the library and patronize it or volunteer and contribute. And these cuts that are being considered will diminish that even more for our community. I'm fortunate that I have the resources to have knowledge, to have books, to have a safe space in air conditioning in the summer, or a safe space to go, period. But so many people in our community are not. And offering a short-term solution, the mayor's gonna present one, is not enough. And it's only after weeks of public outcry. To be part of the city and have all of these cuts considered and move forward with, I am ashamed to be part of Salem, somewhere that I have lived and been happy in my whole life. And it's just an outrage that all of this is moving forward, that our community will have less resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. So Megan Adams is going to be sharing next. If there are some others that are here that did not have the opportunity to sign up, you are welcome to go to the podium also and just say your name and your neighborhood award.
How do I do this? Hi, my name's Katie Paree. I'm a resident of Salem, a grandma, a mom, and one of my heroes, Dr. Ben Carson, did his cutting-edge, career-changing, life-changing, life-rescuing surgeries because as a poor boy with a mom on welfare, he had access to the library. Who is going to be the next Ben Carson? Who is going to be the next inventor? The next doctor who cures cancer? Or the next incredible chef? Or pick the career. But he wouldn't have done any of his surgeries if it hadn't been for his access to the library. That's where he started his learning curve. And he hated reading to begin with. Look at him now, and look at the lives he's saved. Please consider this when you're thinking about the budget for Salem Library. We've got little imaginations out there who are desperate to learn, and they are going to make a difference in our world if they have a chance. And the only way they're going to do that is if they have access to learning, and one of the main ways is free access to the library. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, again, just a reminder, please state your name and your ward or your neighborhood.
Hello, my name is Priscilla Gaspar. I work with the Salem Public Library. I am the bilingual librarian for the Salem Public Library. My position is being cut. I'm heartbroken at the fact that these cuts are disproportionately affecting Spanish-speaking staff members. We have programs that thoroughly support our community. The library is an important place. It's a place for learning. It's a place for lifelong learning. It's a place for community. Community, that's a wonderful word, isn't it? So like I was saying, it's gonna have a huge impact on this space. It's one of the last remaining third spaces that we have within the community. a place where you don't have to pay to take a book. You can get a library card for free. You can access our language programs, our databases, and you just have full access to knowledge. It is also a place for our homeless community and as well as our Spanish speakers and our teens. These cuts will have rippling effects in our community. If we cut back hours, not only will it affect our Spanish speakers, bilingual speakers, children, youth, and other members of our community. It will also have a rippling effect within our community, and this will take place. These rippling effects will show up in ways where, in ways where our community needs, These rippling effects will show up in higher crime rates, such as the library prevents crime in the fact that it's open, it's a warm place to stay, it's a warm place to communicate with your community, and it's just sad that this is happening. I came into this career to help people, and I thoroughly love my community here. I come from Texas originally, and it's been wonderful living here, and since I got this job, I flourished here, and these cuts are just terrible, and I hope that we can find a solution, a long-term solution to help our library as well as our other community services. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rebecca Brisbane. I currently live in Ward 6. I'll be moving to Ward 4 by the end of next month. I am a community member just like all of you. I'm angry because one of the things that I think you guys are really forgetting is our youth. The youth have such little access to safe places. I moved back home in 2021, promising I would never live in this place again. I was a homeless youth. I used the bookmobile. I remember when people fought hard to build the library to what it has been, when the foundation had to be fixed. I remember being a homeless youth with my mom and utilizing its services. You guys are angry because crime is on the rise, yet we don't have programs to help instill education in our youth. I work really, really hard to create a safe space around me everywhere I go. I work hard to advocate for better things for our kids because I'm still in it in my mind. I'm really, really ashamed of Salem right now, the people who voted for these cuts. It is so hard. I came from nothing, and this city gave us so little when we were growing up, and I moved back promising to help make changes. I've helped found nonprofits. I'm currently working on another nonprofit called Radness Ensues to create safe spaces for our youth and our families because we need more. It's not okay. A lot of the youth use the library as a safe refuge because it's one of the few places not controlled by religion or government. I'm not against religion, I'm not against government, but I am against having that dictate the way that we live our lives and tell us how we're supposed to live and who we're supposed to be. We need safe sanctuaries that are neutral. If you're not investing in the library, you're an idiot, and that is my honest opinion.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is David Gaspar. I'm in the Salem IT department, and I just wanted to just offer a different perspective and to say that the IT department has eliminated some vacant positions. So we haven't needed layoffs, but we have eliminated some vacant positions, which results in higher workload for the remainder of us. So I have a lot of tickets, and I know a lot of other of my coworkers also have tickets. And we support a lot of the departments, the library, police department, fire department. And I think that at the core of this issue is funding. And last year when the tax proposal was made, I think that was just very badly advertised. It seemed like it was an enhancement to things that we didn't need, or the things that it would help, but it's not what it was for. It was for a lot of things. It would have helped fund the library. It would have kept the police and firemen positions that we're also eliminating. And in addition, it would have also provided us some additional nice things as well. And I would have liked that. The voters have spoken, and it was just the tax was just too high for some people, or some people didn't see the value in some of the things that were being added. But at the point of it, we were advertising that we're getting more things for a couple more taxes. It didn't advertise that we'd be cutting library funding. It didn't advertise that we'd be, or if it was very low key, and it wasn't emphasized at all. And so I think a good way to maybe fund more things would be to maybe offer 3 steps of funding instead of just one. That sounds like we're just getting things that we didn't ask for. So like at the basic step, whatever a tax rate would be to keep services where they are now, our library positions, keep those, keep the firemen, police positions. Step 2 would be to enhance, to bring back positions that we've lost to pre-pandemic levels, so that we would bring back some IT positions that we've lost. And I know a lot of other departments just eliminated vacant positions to help the budget. If we could bring those positions back and we could provide services back to the people of Salem, and then at step 3, we could have a slightly higher tax rate and provide even more services to the people of Salem, provide more services to the homeless, provide more services that the police could provide to other people, that the library could provide to other people. And yeah, just 3 levels of service, I think, to offer to the people to vote on and to see what would be a good idea to provide funding for the services that the city provides.
Thank you. Next.
Hi there, my name is Taylor Rakup. I live in Ward 4, and for the last 10 months, I have had the privilege of serving as an intern at the Salem Public Library. I moved here to Salem from Las Vegas, Nevada in December of 2022, and I received my Oregon State license in January of 2022, and the first day that I had my license, one of the first things I did was come to the library to get my library card. I was very impressed upon entering with the size of the space and just the options available. I am from Las Vegas, Sin City, not known for its big reading culture, but it still has an extremely robust library system supported not by city budget, but by its own separate, distinct library district. Not subject to the whims of city budget or city government or city politics. My position as an intern is inherently temporary, but my coworkers are not subject to that or should not be. I know my internship is coming to an end, and I knew that going into it, but my coworkers had no reason to believe that a year, 2, 3 years, 4, 5 years after being hired that their positions would be eliminated the very week of Library Appreciation Week. I love this city, I really do. I come from a place that is not at all like this, but it is extremely disheartening to see that the library system is in jeopardy at the moment. And quite frankly, I'm disgusted by the proposals to reduce or even close the library, and the idea that the library is truly discretionary is extremely alarming. Sorry, one second. I will say, just to finish, that I think that the library is not only public safety, it is community service, it is education, it is crime reduction, and it should be one of the most funded departments that our city has to offer if it is not going to be its own separate district. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name's Jane Tichnell. I'm from Ward 7. The desire to keep library services available have been communicated often in the past several weeks, hopefully loud enough to be heard by this committee. The decisions made now on this committee will have lasting effects on the feelings and confidence the Salem residents will have not only towards their city, but towards their leaders. Eliminating essential services from the library goes beyond the walls of the Salem building. It sends a message to the residents of the city. It tells young people we do not value the safe spaces for them to be. It tells families we do not value their quality time building positive relationships with each other. It tells them we do not value the single parent who relies on library services to build the love of literacy with their children. It tells students we do not value their desire to study in order to make change in this world. Make no mistake, our children will feel the effect of these cuts. They will see how you choose to act in this moment. They will know if you stand with them or against them. There will come a day when we will have to answer to our children about the decisions that we have made that have affected their lives. I want to be a parent and a community member that can look my son in the eyes and tell him I did everything I could to keep this community, our home, safe and accessible for everyone. It is up to us, the adults, to fix the situation, not just for each other, but for our kids. We owe our children and the future generation to set aside personal agenda and work together to fund sustainable sources and to communicate with the general public often and in accessible ways to show them that we do respect their voice, we do value their experience, and we will work together to right our wrongs. Please make the decision to fund our library this year and work with us to find sustainable funding for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, my name is David Pari, and I wanted to come up and speak really briefly because when I was 10, my mom and I moved from Independence to Salem, literally surviving my father. And one of the things is I saw friends around me, and we were in a tough time. I was homeless for a brief period of time. My mom was surviving horrible scars from that person. The only reason I can say proudly that I am not with many of those that I grew up in, either no longer with us, on drugs, or in prison, is because I was at places like the Boys and Girls Club, or hours and hours at the library. When I turned 18, I remember coming to the library constantly. Now, I know it's been said, but in my current role now as the supervisor at my job, when we have to make tough decisions, we give people the why, and we tell them what we chose instead. So when I talk to my kids, because I want them to be informed, I don't have a good why. Why we're closing summer programs. Why are we closing libraries? I've started seeing and helping people in volunteer time who don't have a place to go. And one of the constant things that this city that we promise is we'll give you hope, we'll give you opportunity. But then we're shutting the one place down that they can go to avoid these things. What I ask everybody to look at is, if we are going to make this decision, what's the really powerful why you can give? Because right now, as it's been said multiple times, there's not a good why, and it's only going to harm those in the long-term effect. And when you look at the kids who are having to make a decision of whether to go to a safe place or whether not to, and the library is closed, they're only going to have one alternative. Many of us now are sitting in places where we don't have to worry about the electricity being off. We don't have to worry about our spare clothes being in a garbage bag so that when it rains we can avoid hypothermia. But the people that come to the library, you're going to take that decision away from them, and it's going to lead to death. It's going to lead to people finding hope no longer gone, finding hope no longer being a place that they can invest in, and when they see the why isn't good enough, the people who made this decision are not going to have a good reason to give them why this change made. So as a parent and as somebody who has a special needs child, but yet who is very informed because I constantly keep them updated, please give us a why this was the right decision that we made the change so that we can keep telling them that there is hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Vincent. I live in Ward 8. I'm 13. And instead of being at home, talking to my friends, reading a book, drawing, playing video games, I am here trying to convince a room of adults that we should not close down a library, a place of public education. Not only would this affect many of our communities that live here in Salem, but this would affect everyone. This would affect our parents, our siblings, our teachers. Everyone who lives here in Salem has either seen this library, passed by it, or gone in this library. I have lived in Salem my entire life. Some of my earliest memories are in that library. I want to be a lawyer when I grow up, and I am lucky enough to have access to the internet. I am lucky enough to have access to this library. Many people do not, and it appalls me that we are even considering shutting it down or taking away the budgets when we have already taken so much money away from this library, and we have already cut the budget so many times. Why do we need to do it again? I am ashamed of this city for even considering this. And I am ashamed of this city for making me come and stand up here to explain to a room of adults why we should not cut the budget and why we should not take away public education. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Online, we have Sadie Verville.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay. Hello, I'm Sadie Verville in Ward 1. I'm here to comment on the current budget options and ask that you do not consider any cuts or closure to the Salem Public Library. The staff that would be laid off include 5 bilingual Spanish-speaking staff, and as mentioned, this would eliminate Spanish programming, which is unforgivable. The reduction of library open hours to 3, maybe 4 days a week is unacceptable. Libraries are so much more than books. They're safe spaces for all kinds of people, from teens using the teen scene after school to people trying to escape extreme temperatures and weather. Limiting hours limits families' access to children's literacy services, and it limits people's access to computers, job-seeking services, and adult literacy, and much more. As you can see from the beautiful testimonies we've heard this evening, this library is essential to our community. Go in on a Saturday and see the crowds, and you'll see how well loved this place is. And to reduce that even further, I just can't imagine how overwhelming that must be for staff on those days, like on that Saturday. I mean, and I just want to thank the person who brought up the massive lawsuits against our cops that's costing us our tax dollars. Why would we punish the library for another department's failures? Please remove all proposed cuts to the library from the table.
Is that it, Sadie? I assume so. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your thoughts, your concerns, and of course, your input. We do value hearing from every voice, from Ward 1, 5 to 8. It does matter. So thank you so much for sharing and being in this space with us. Moving on, just for our members that are here, the next order of business will be to approve our minutes from March 21st, 2024. And may I have a motion to approve the minutes from March 21st to 24th meeting?
So moved.
I have a motion by member Dixon.
Second.
Manville, my apologies, Manville. And a second by who?
Barney, second.
Member Varney, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to action items. I'm going to bring to the floor our CFO, Eggleston. He's going to review some information items, and you may have this note, but just so the members know, item 5A was mistitled in the original agenda as a presentation by our city manager, Staley, and so it should have been the answers to the committee members' questions. So that was mistitled there. So now, CFO Eggleston, take it over.
Good evening, Josh Eggleston, Chief Financial Officer. Just a quick review of your information items. Delivered last week was the City of Salem budget, the Urban Renewal Agency budget, the proposed capital improvement plan, and the original agenda. That included a staff report and a great deal of testimony. Today on your desk should be an additions agenda, also with additional testimony, a second staff report with answers to committee questions, and that correction for the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eggleston, for that overview. Any questions from the committee? No questions. There are no public hearings this evening, so we will move on to item number 7, and it'll be a presentation by our city manager, Mr. Staley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was a lot, and thank you to everybody for everything that you shared. There wasn't much that was said that I wouldn't agree with. When Josh, Callie, where are you, Kelly, sent me the budget message, the draft of the budget message, it included an opening sentence. It was my pleasure to submit to you the proposed 2025 budget. I struck that out. I am not pleased about this budget proposal. It doesn't meet our community or our organizational needs, and I'm disappointed about that. That is not to say that there isn't positive in this budget and that it doesn't move us forward in some areas, because it does, just not in the general fund. Josh, Kelly, James, Ryan, Embassy, Jenny have all done a masterful job in preparing the budget and assembling the information into a highly informative, remarkably detailed, and usable document that will help us inform the budget deliberations and guide our operations for the coming year. Thank you to all of them for this work. And thank you also to Scott, Krishna, and the rest of the leadership team for their work to assemble this budget. It takes a city to build a budget. This budget was hard work, full of emotion and challenging conversations. They all have risen to the occasion and have maintained a positive first-team mentality throughout this process. Thank you also to the 1,350 employees who continue to be at your service every day of the year for the City of Salem. We could have taken an incremental approach to budget reductions, as has been done in the past for many years. We could have continued to patch things together to cut a few positions here and a few more there and a few more next year and the year after that without ever surfacing the real issue. It's like the myth of the slowly boiling the frog. The frog doesn't notice it until it's too late, and by then it's cooked, and that really is a myth, by the way. I am approaching this process much more intentionally. I'm going to make cuts. If we are going to make cuts and reduce services, we should do so intentionally with a full knowledge of the impact to the community and the organization. We're not going to boil this frog. As a city manager, I am required by the charter to prepare and transmit an annual budget to City Council for their consideration. The budget that I submit must be built and balanced based on the reasonable expectations about our financial situation as included in our 5-year financial forecast. It must be detailed and based on our reasonable estimate of the positions and the resources we need to deliver the services and programs that we propose. I believe that the proposed 2025 budget does that. Over the course of the next 2 months, the Budget Committee, the Council, will deliberate on the proposed budget. They may adjust the proposed budget, and after all that, they are required to adopt a balanced budget by June 30th of 2024. I understand it is the mayor's intention to initiate a process of adjusting the budget this evening by offering a motion that commits dollars from our TOT reserve to fund to cover approximately $1.2 million reduction in the library's budget that is included in the proposed 2025 budget. While this is by no means a long-term solution, it will keep the library open at the currently funded level until our revenue picture is more clear. I fully support that proposal and recognize it as a bridge to a potential solution. The budget proposal is the first part of a 5-year plan to maintain our financial solvency. If we are unsuccessful in finding new revenues in the next year, the cuts to our future budget will need to be broad and deep. We are hyper aware of that possibility. While this year has been painful, next year's budget will be far more challenging and will affect all general fund departments and programs, all general fund departments and programs. The reductions in the proposed 2025 budget reflect difficult choices made after thorough deliberation by me and the leadership team to move toward fiscal sustainability. We use a decision-making framework known as priority-based budgeting to do that. Each program is evaluated and scored based on alignment with strategic objectives and basic program attributes. We have 111 programs in the city that are evaluated by this team. Programs that score lower are discretionary programs that are found in community services. This approach to budgeting is regarded as a best practice and was previously approved by City Council when we adopted the strategic plan. I also want us to move away from conversations about taking from one program to fund another program. Cutting the pie into ever smaller slices is not the solution. That's not sustainable, and that's not fair. We need to focus our energies on increasing our revenues so that we can provide the programs that our community wants and needs. We need to grow the pie to do that. That is the work of the Revenue Task Force. We need to trust and support that process. The proposed 2025 budget assumes no additional general fund revenue. We are, however, committed to continuing that conversation about new revenue. A revenue task force was established in 2023 to explore new additional revenue sources and adjustment to fees to sustain those services that do not have a dedicated revenue stream, like the library, and make a recommendation to City Council by July of 2024. The community will provide input into this process through community open houses. The second of those was held just last night. A community survey has been completed and is currently being evaluated, and written and oral testimony, of course, are being received. Without an identified new source of revenue, the City of Salem will experience further reductions in service in the years ahead. All the analysis and planning represented in this budget is a product of dedicated city staff, an engaged and involved community, and the City Council's leadership to responsively develop, and refine, and approve a continuum of plans, strategies, policies that guide city operations and the future of Salem. Each element is successful to our success in delivering high-quality services, improving Salem's infrastructure, supporting the quality of life of our residents, and managing it all with sound financial practices. So thank you to the Budget Committee for your service on behalf of our community and for your work on the city's budget.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Members, are there any questions for Mr. Staley? Yes, there's a question on the floor. Member Geyer.
Yes, you mentioned when can the Revenue Task Force solutions be implemented? Can they be implemented by 2025?
Josh, you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, again, Josh Eggleston, Chief Financial Officer. It's a nuanced question. It really depends what revenue options they might recommend and what City Council wants to do with them. Assuming it's a revenue that needs to go to the ballot, it could go in November of 2024, which is a very, very tight timeline. May of 2025. Either of those elections, for example, a local option levy, what we would receive in November as part of the fiscal year 2026 budget.
Thank you, Josh.
Are there any other questions on the floor? Yes, there's a question on the floor. Member Belichek.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Brown. And another follow-up question with about the Revenue Task Force, and Josh hinted on it, if it has to go to the ballot. Is there any guarantee that the Revenue Task Force will come up with a solution to our dire fiscal situation?
No, I don't think there were any guarantees offered or suggested. It's a process. We'll go through that process. We'll evaluate the recommendations of the committee. As was said, we anticipate presenting those to the City Council in a joint session July 15th, I believe it is. Courtney, is that correct? Yes, head nods. So on July 15th, we anticipate the Revenue Task Force making recommendations, presenting recommendations to City Council.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Yes, Member Curtis.
Thank you. I know we talked about this previously, and I'm not sure it was wrapped up. What is the status of the operations fee that was going to be adjusted for larger businesses versus individual households? And is that reflected in this budget?
It is not reflected in this budget. We have just now almost finished the software implementation that would give us the flexibility to manage a revised operations fee. As we go through this process, I suspect that we'll hear more about the operations fee from the Revenue Task Force, and we'll see where they would like to go with this. But it is definitely an option. It is one of the few levers that we have that we can pull here at a City Council level without requiring a vote of the people. And it is something that we would need to evaluate, and I would suggest that we move with some caution and deliberateness before we would jump into that. So let's fully understand what the ramifications would be and what the options for that revenue would be and how we would want it to look. The City of Bend recently adopted an operations fee based on the size of buildings and the type of use. It's specifically directed for transportation, so the nexus is pretty clear there. So we would want to evaluate those options and, again, not do it in a rushed or quick manner.
Thank you. Question on the floor, Member Dixon.
Just to follow up on those comments, does that, as a practical matter, mean that the operations fee adjustment would not be available for 2025?
As Josh would probably say, it depends. It depends on, when we would engage in that discussion, how we would move that forward. The implementation of an operations fee is pretty direct. Once council adopts the ordinance, it can go into effect relatively quickly. But we have to adopt the ordinance. We have to get to that point in order to do that. So in the 2025 budget, probably. Before the 2025 budget, definitely not.
Are there any other questions on the floor or even online?
Yeah, I have a follow-up.
Yes, please, Member Phillips.
Thank you. And I appreciate my colleagues for bringing up this question. This is a question that I had for City Manager yesterday. So I guess my follow-up question in regards to, updating and, in my opinion, improving the operations fee to be more targeted and more practical, in my opinion, and just to collect more from the larger entities in our community that are, in my opinion, using more resources. What would be the amount of time that process might take? I mean, are we talking, 3 months or 13 months? And I don't necessarily need this exact answer tonight, but in the next week or two, if we could get an estimate as to how long it would take to get a sense of, getting a proposal in front of either this committee or the city council.
Thank you, Member Phillips. Please.
I will come back with a more definitive response, but I would suggest that we engage that work following the Revenue Task Force, and that perhaps even immediately following the Revenue Task Force. Staff and our consultants are fully engaged in this budget process and in supporting the Revenue Task Force. So I do not think that we would have the capacity to provide the sort of support and evaluation and outreach that is necessary to do that and do it well. So I would suggest let's finish the Revenue Task Force process, let's get their recommendations, and then immediately we can roll into looking at the operations fee if that's something that council and the task force think is advisable.
A follow-up question to that on the floor. Member Nordike.
Thank you. Is the task force also looking at changes to the operations fee? I would hate for us to duplicate or confuse or create conflicting efforts.
We haven't gotten to that level yet, so stay tuned. I mean, we have another meeting next week on Wednesday, is it? 25th?
Thursday the 25th.
Thursday the 25th. So we are going to continue the conversation about the 42 revenue options that are in front of them, and one of those is the operations fee.
Please continue.
Thank you, Chair Brown. The last time I asked this question about our consultants, I asked the consultants if the task force is looking at funding specific to our library. And the consultants responded at the time saying that the scope was about finding revenue funds on a more general scale. But I would just encourage the city and encourage the task force to consider, I believe a gas tax is one of the considered options, would be transportation specific. I'm not mentioning that to suggest I favor that, but I'm saying that the revenue, I use it as an example. The Revenue Task Force is looking at some specific funding that could only be used for specific purposes, and I would urge the task force to also consider funding specific to our library.
Thank you, Member Nordike. Are there any other follow-up questions on the floor or online? Mr. CFO, I do have a question. So when the sun sets on the Revenue Task Force, will the budget team be allowed to come back to see their final recommendations, considering our meetings will already been passed?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. That's not something that we're currently considering. Of course, any eventual revenue would flow into the budget and you would see it. We will definitely provide an update when you reconvene in January. If there is desire for another meeting, that's something we could consider also.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other follow-up questions on the floor or online? Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Moving on, it'll be time for our CFO to share with us. Members, he's going to be presenting with us some areas, some result areas, and at each one, there'll be two tonight, we'll have the opportunity to engage in conversation and to go back and forth with some feedback. Any questions? I have a hand already. Member Gwynn.
I'm sorry, I was wondering if we could take a small break before the CFO.
I was thinking we could take a break around about like 11 o'clock tonight instead.
Just a short break.
No, we will definitely consider taking a break. It is 19:28, 7:30 for some of us. We will come back at 7:40. Is everyone back? So members, just to remind ourselves, CFO Eggleston, he's going to share with us his result area. And once he's concluded, you will have the opportunity to ask questions of him or clarifying questions of another member, and you can also make a motion at that time. So I will turn it over to CFO Eggleston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we move into the result areas, I just want to provide a little context for the budget and the budget document. There on the right, you can see the budget cycle. We're in the spring when we're presenting the budget, but you remember back in January, we had the 5-year forecast, followed by the policy agenda. So the role of the Budget Committee is integral to this annual cycle as the committee receives the budget proposal from the city manager, provides opportunities for community feedback, and sets the property tax levy, and makes the budget recommendation to the City Council. Salem is a full-service city operating emergency dispatch and response, library, parks, neighborhood services, code enforcement, land use planning, homeless and social services, water, wastewater, stormwater, and street maintenance. As you can see on this screen, the city has 24 budgeted funds in 7 different fund types. These funds act like smaller entities within the city and generally are restricted for a specific purpose. There in the bottom right, you can see the general fund, where this body spends a lot of their time, but there are 23 other funds that we are looking at. On this slide, you can see the total resource budget for the city, $924.5 million across those 24 funds, an expenditure budget of $724.6 million there on the right. And I should note that materials and services amount there in the top, $368.5 million. About half of that is the construction budget. This display shows the city total expenditure budget broken into 6 results areas, including the construction funds. As you can see, the safe, reliable, and efficient infrastructure is the largest, followed by safe and healthy community, and then good governance. The budget display converts hundreds of line item entries into programs and align those programs with results the community cares about. Excuse me. The goal of priority-based budgeting is to ensure resources are being applied to the highest and best use to achieve those results. In the budget document, each result area is designated by a tab with the result area name and icon. To allow us to compile the budget publication, each of the program has been assigned to a home result area. Each tab section shows all the programs in that result area, as well as the budget and position count for the fiscal year 2025 budget and the prior year proposed. The alignment column describes the most, more, less, or least aligned with all the results areas. A less or least aligned program doesn't mean the city can or should stop doing the program. The less or least score could mean that the program has a strong or essential influence in a single or a couple result areas, but not all of them. There could also be federal or state mandates that require the city to have the program. On the right, the check mark indicates an influence anywhere from minor to essential in each of the results areas. Also in the table of contents section of the budget document, there's some new organizational charts that show the results area, funds, departments, and services that are contained in each of the results areas. So if you have a question about what program, what services live in each of the results areas, the table of contents of the large book is a great resource. Now for the general fund specifically, this display shows the updated view of the general fund 5-year forecast with the proposed 2025 budget included. On this slide, you can see, the revenues in orange and the expenditures in gray. Highlighted in the box is the proposed fiscal year 2025 budget. And just to align everyone's axes here on the left, you can see the axis for the budget items, so that aligns with the columns. And then on the right, it aligns with the lines, so the fund balance and the green lines. As you can see, even with the reductions we are going to talk about here in a few minutes, we are still anticipating to spend more than the revenues we're collecting. This trend continues for the 5-year view on this slide. In green, using the right axes, you can see the projected ending fund balance or savings account balance. This body has talked about that quite a bit. The fund balance is important in the general fund for a few reasons. One of the main reasons is simply to be able to pay bills for employees before we get property taxes in November. We have to be able to cash flow July, August, September, and October. The City Council fund balance policy of 15% budgeted revenues ensures that the city has the appropriate level to meet this need. That policy amount is reflected in the dotted green line. The goal for fiscal year 2025 is to maintain compliance with that council policy. As you can see, we are just at that policy compliance line with our projections. This chart, the next slide, you might not notice too much of a difference. The option 1 reductions that we talked about for the out years, including 12 police positions, multiple fire stations, they're reflected in this second chart, and you can see the fund balance picture is better. It still doesn't meet fund balance compliance. If it's okay, Mr. Chair, if I could pause there to see if there's any questions before I go into the results area.
Yes, sir. Question on the floor, Member Curtis.
Thank you. This might be crazy, but could the council adopt a policy of a lower fund balance percentage just for 1 year? For instance, I don't know, 12% or something, 10, until we get through the revenue committee process and try to fix this structural imbalance. Because we're looking for about $4 million, I think, something like that for this 2025 fiscal year. So would that be in the realm of possibility that you could adjust that on a 1-year basis?
Is that a question or a motion?
It's a question.
Mr. CFO?
Yeah, if I may. So the council policy, 15%, really reflects an actual cash flow need. So if you look at our cash balance in years where the balance was lower and where we're projecting to go, we go negative in cash in the general fund. So we accrue negative interest for that month. If we go further away, where we go negative, we'd have to set up some kind of internal borrowing to pay the bills. I wouldn't recommend going lower. Council could make an exception to the policy and go below policy compliance. They wouldn't have to necessarily change the policy.
Did that help, Member Curtis?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know how much wiggle room there was, but I mean, I think we have to look at all the different options, and it wouldn't be a long-term, in my opinion, it wouldn't be a long-term solution, but at least it might get us through until we have a clear picture of what new revenue sources might be.
Yeah, if I may, just a little bit more context. So if we go down to that line and we go further below, it takes a lot more to get us back above it. So we don't have any guarantee of revenue. Keith confirmed that shortly ago. So even with a better picture, that picture might mean no additional revenue and further deeper cuts to get back to that policy compliance.
Are there any other additional questions on the floor? Seeing none. Mr. CFO, continue.
Throughout our scheduled budget committee meetings, we'll highlight changes and initiatives in each of the result areas. Tonight we'll be covering Welcome Livable Community and Natural Environment Stewardship. The Welcome Livable Community result area starts on page 175 of the city budget book, and Natural Environment Stewardship begins on page 89. As mentioned, Welcome Livable Community is the first result area for review this evening. The result area total budget is $41.9 million, and there are 131 full-time equivalent positions within this result area programs. Program pages for the result area provide a further breakdown of services and positions. There are several reductions to services included in the proposed budget for this result area that will be discussed in more detail in the coming slides. As I think you all are acutely aware, the library is one of the services of the general fund that is proposed for a reduction 7.25 FTE, and all seasonal staff of the library would be eliminated. As mentioned previously this evening, 6 of those positions are filled. The impact of this reduction would be the closure of the West Salem Branch Library and a further reduction of hours at the main library branch to 25 to 30 hours per week. There would also be less staff capacity and less staff capacity for programming results in fewer story times and special programs for teens and adults put on at the library. Outreach to school and the use of the bookmobile would also be impacted. Pop-up library services, which visit 24 sites citywide, would also be drastically reduced or eliminated. Parks will also be impacted by a $700,000 reduction in the proposed 25 budget. Most seasonal staff would be eliminated, and other expenses supporting maintenance, repair, and amenities would be reduced. The impact of these reductions are highest on neighboring community parks, which represent 57 parks in Salem. This would mean no irrigation, restroom access, or functioning drinking fountains at those locations. Portable restrooms could be installed in some park locations. Splash pads would be turned off except at Riverfront Park, and irrigation would only occur at reservable areas. There would be limited staff support for events, especially during the evening, without closing staff. This reduction would also impact the ability to support cleanups, repair vandalism, and remove graffiti in parks. The proposed elimination of the Youth Development Program would reduce 1 FTE, also filled, who manages this program, as well as associated grants and other program expenses. These reductions would eliminate several initiatives and efforts. iLead connects local students through an annual conference with workshops based on interests of the youth in the community. Care Corps is a 3-week service leadership camp during the summer that provides job skill development and volunteer service learning. These programs develop teens who could eventually apply for city jobs or boards and commissions. 1,000 souls.
Josh, some folks are having a hard time hearing you. Can you speak up, please?
I'll attempt to. Sorry, I have about a month-and-a-half tickle going on in my throat, so I'll see how it goes. The 1,000 Souls is a teen champion community shoe drive that collects and distributes donated shoes to children and youth in need, reducing support for unsheltered, specifically in areas and activating support youth and youth adult portions of the population, and also many grants to nonprofit organizations that foster workforce readiness, support teen mental health, and develop teen leaders in the community would also be eliminated. So it's the position as well as the associated grants. The proposed fiscal year 2025 budget would also reduce recreation service programs and increase fees for the remaining programs. With these reductions, there would be fewer sites as well as a smaller number of program options. To focus resources on programs with the most participation, movies in the park and kid relays would be eliminated. Neighborhood summer parks and camp program fee waivers for Salem residents that meet specific qualifications will be reduced to 20%. Fee waivers for local youth serving nonprofits would no longer be granted. Another change would be increased revenue through increased fees. A non-resident fee would be instituted for softball and kickball leagues, as well as a general increase of facility use fees by 20%. The proposed fiscal year 2025 budget would also reduce Center 50+ service programs and increase fees for room rentals and non-Salem residents. With these reductions, there would be fewer expansion of programs or the ability to offer new programs. Evening and weekend hours will be reduced due to decrease in seasonal staffing funds, and there will be fewer dollars available for printing materials, hobby supplies used by guests, or marketing. Also proposed for reduction is the $400,000 in social service grants. Social service grants support various nonprofit community partners who provide programs to reduce food insecurity, assist vulnerable populations. In fiscal year 2024, domestic violence services, an unsheltered youth program, and a crisis hotline were all funded. These grants are awarded based on a competitive process. The organizations that are awarded can change each year. Also proposed for elimination is the grant provided to the Salem Housing Authority for the Special Program Outreach Team, formerly known as HRAP, or the Homeless Rental Assistance Program. This program provides outreach to unsheltered residents in the community to build relationships, extend connections to services, and help people move to safer indoor locations. The Salem Housing Authority currently does have some limited funding to continue this program without city support. A couple highlights for the area. Many of the current sheltering services the city supports were started using federal and state grants. These efforts include 3 micro-shelter sites with capacity to serve over 250 people. City programming for these sites are proposed for elimination in fiscal year 2025 as grant funds have been spent down. The navigation center is continued to have grant support, and at least 2 of the micro-shelter locations have some state support to continue their operations. The city was recently a recipient of a $1 million grant for tree planting from the USDA Forest Service for urban community forests, which has been included in the proposed fiscal year 2025 budget to implement a tree planting program and community forestry internship program in Salem. Through partnerships with schools and community organizations, this project will plant trees on large lots owned by schools and community organizations and implement tree-related curriculum at schools. Project has also continued on Parks Bonds project paid for by the Safety and Livability Bond in various phases from planning to pre-development work. Some of the projects include athletic courts, playground facilities, McKay School park improvements, and the Minto Brown parking lots. This concludes the presentation on the Welcome Level community, and staff are available for questions or committee discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CFO. Is there a comment, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the proposed library reductions be restored to the fiscal year 2025 budget and funded with a transfer from the Cultural and Tourism Fund working capital.
Second.
Is there any room for discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This proposed budget is devastating. These cuts are completely unacceptable, in my opinion. I do think that we have a way to restore service to our library, restore these cuts from our library through this one-time transfer. It doesn't solve the problem for the library long-term, and it doesn't solve any of the other problems just outlined by our CFO, but it is one part of a very important temporary solution. This is exactly the conversation we had hoped to avoid when several of us proposed alternative revenue last year. This is devastating to our city, just the possibility that these things could happen. And we simply can't allow our library to be cut further, and I would encourage all of my colleagues to support this motion. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Question on the floor, Member Dixon.
Just a couple of questions. Is the amount that would be restored, the 1.16 million approximately, the amount that would be restored for library funding, what is that amount?
Would you like me to respond?
Please, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The amount is the precise amount that's proposed to be cut, and is it 1.16? 1.16 million.
1.16.
Yes.
1.16.
Yes.
And then how much working cap? This is from working capital in the Cultural and Tourism Fund budget, is that right?
Yes.
And how much is in working capital?
I would defer to the CFO for that
Okay.
precise number and that answer.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I'm going to refer to the budget document.
Is there a certain page you would like us to turn to, Mr. CFO?
I can turn to it for you and tell you the number. But if you're interested, it starts on page 311, the Cultural and Tourism Funds. The being capital proposed for fiscal year 2025 is 4.2 million.
4.2.
And if I may,
please,
for full transparency, if you look on the same page, you'll see in fiscal year 2022, the fund did 2021 and fiscal year 2022, the fund did receive revenue replacement from ARPA. So the Cultural Tourism Fund was severely impacted by the pandemic with lost revenue. So that has bolstered that fund balance. We are projecting a decline in the fund balance. We're spending more than we're bringing in there. So that 4.2, if you look at the 5-year forecast for the Cultural Tourism Fund, does decline over that period.
Additional questions on the floor? Please continue, Member Dixon.
I just wanted to finish my comment. I strongly support the motion.
Thank you. There's another comment. Was it Member Manville?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Brown. I'm wondering if city staff could talk to the testimony of Tammy Carpenter that was submitted in the additions agenda from the restaurant and lodging folks.
If I may,
You want to speak to that right now in the middle of
the
the motion?
city attorney, if we could have him come up and speak to it.
Please, Mr. Attorney.
Dan Atchison, City Attorney. So the city's transit occupancy tax was adopted by city charter by a vote of the people. It was most recently amended in 1999. There is a state law that restricts use of transit occupancy tax funds, even for the city of Salem, to tourism related facilities. I've looked at that. I've looked at our charter, and our charter also limits use of funds to cultural facilities and major tourist attractions. It's my determination that the Salem Library meets both definitions of a cultural facility as well as a tourism-related facility under state law. So I think it would meet our code and charter requirements as well as the state law requirements. I understand the Oregon Lodging Association has objected to that in their written testimony that's been supplied to council, and I am sure we'll have discussions on that going forward.
And Mr. City Attorney, how often can we pull from this fund?
It has to be used for specific purposes. So it has to be used for tourism-related facilities. It has to be used for major tourist attractions and cultural facilities. It's a requirement of the charter, so we can use the fund to the full extent it's available, but for just those purposes.
Got it. Thank you. Question on the floor. Yes, Member Gwynn.
What about kid relays and movies in the park?
I would need to consider that. To the extent that it is a tourist attraction. So a tourist attraction isn't defined in the charter. We've looked at it several times over the years for various purposes. If there is an event such as like the art fair and things like that that had the bring in people from outside the area for a tourism related experience and would be eligible, that sort of thing, I don't know. I couldn't say offhand right at this meeting.
Additional questions? Yes, Member Cohen.
To Member Gwynn's comment, I researched this because I was going to make a similar motion. The United Nations World Tourism Organization defines urban or city tourism as follows: a type of tourism activity which takes place in an urban space with its inherent attributes characterized by non-agricultural based economy. Activities carried out include museums, art galleries, historical buildings, festivals, concerts, and parades, amongst others. They also note that there is a strong correlation between city tourism and shopping tourism. And so the comment I'd like to make is about the closure of either the library or the closure of movies in the park. As a adult who has 3 kids, 5 and under, I will take my children to Independence for movies in the park, and I will take my hard-earned cash to those restaurants and businesses. The city of Salem is losing out on revenue potential by closing these activities is beyond abhorrent that we're considering them. So along with the mayor's motion, I would also include within that the refunding of the J.C. Rayleigh's Movies in the Park and the other one. Concerts, thank you. Because that will bring negative revenue to our city, and we are self-sabotaging ourselves if we do that. Thank you.
So just for clarity, and thank you, Mr. City Attorney. So just for clarity, the motion on the floor is for us to have this 1.16 million. And within that motion, we also want to include to make sure that it covers the relay races, the concerts, and the movies, all in one motion. Yeah, we need two of those.
If I may, I don't think there was an actual amendment suggested, but that's how it would be structured, as an amendment to the motion.
It's amendment to the motion.
That'd be an amendment that I would request.
Got it. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. It would be my preference to do those in separate motions. We can certainly take that one up right after this one, but it would be my preference to do them independently.
Okay. So we do have his motion on the floor, and it was a second by...
I seconded the mayor's motion.
Got it.
So that you're still in deliberations on
Right.
the motion on the floor.
Got it. And there's another question on the floor. Yes, Member Hoy.
Thank you, and it is for the city attorney. Thank you.
One moment, just a point of order. The member's motion hasn't been seconded yet. The motion to amend has not been seconded, so we need a second for that.
I'll second.
Motion to amend. Thank
I'll
you.
second.
It's been second. Thank you. Member Gwynn. Continue, Member Hoy.
Thank you. Is there concern, have there been other cities who have come up against this particular tax, and how have they fared?
Many cities have a transit occupancy tax. Most recently, there's a case out of the city of Bend where they amended the proportion that they use for tourism-related activities. The Lodging Association brought an action against them, and Lodging Association prevailed, but it's a completely different set of facts than what we're looking at.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Was there another question online? Member Phillips?
Yeah, thank you. I guess this would be like a point of clarification. So I have two questions. First point of clarification is I think we now have a seconded motion to amend the original motion. So right now the discussion and questions should be for the amended motion, which is the mayor's original proposal plus getting funding from TOT for the relay and like the movie nights at the parks.
Correct.
Okay. So my questions in regards to the amended motion is, how much is that? Like, what's the additional amount of funds that would bring this to? Like, I knew that the original motion was 1.16 million. Well, what are we looking at if we do all of this?
I'll look to the Deputy City Manager, Scott Archer.
Deputy City Manager, Mr. Archer. No pressure.
And while he's walking up, if I may, if you could leave, I think the general number is 1.16. If you could give staff discretion for rounding and how to actually put it back in the budget, we would appreciate that.
I didn't make a specific number. I just had the restoration.
Okay.
That was good.
Thank you, Mr. CFO. Yes, sir, Mr. Archer.
Good evening, Scott Archer, Deputy City Manager for Community Services. So I've got two of the three, and I think we're efforting here to find out the third number. It's roughly 50,000 is the movies, 30,000 is the relays, and it's the concerts that we're trying to find out the exact number. What was that? 16,000? So that's another 16,000 then for the concerts.
And what's the total?
So
96,000. Thank you, Mr. Archer. I think there's another question.
I mean, just to follow up, I think that means it's about 1.3 million because it was about 1.2. Is that an approximation that works for the staff?
Mr. Mayor, please.
Just for clarification, I didn't include the dollar total specifically in my motion. I just said to restore the proposed cuts. I wanted to leave the staff the flexibility without actually specifying the number. The number came during the discussion, but not during the motion.
And I think we can do that. I think it's wise to leave that open just so staff can have some time with Mr. Archer to make sure we come back with the correct amount.
That would be preferred, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I was just commenting that I think that would be preferred if we could be sure about that and bring that back.
It works for me.
I have a follow-up question that's still in the same vein.
Please, Member Phillips, continue.
So I agree with, for the purpose of the motion, not having the dollar amounts, but for the, what is the, the discrepancy between an approximately 1.2, upping it to $1.3 million one-time transfer from the TOT fund? Is that a material difference? I mean, this is something we can't do year after year. It's only this 1 year. How big of a deal is this?
Well, I think that's the question I asked earlier with the city attorneys, like how many times will we dip into this fund? And what I've heard, and tell me if I'm hearing this correct, so we can do this now and we can do it again, but sooner or later we will deplete the fund. Correct?
If I may, yes, that is correct. You could certainly do it for this year. I think before you did it again, I think we'd like to have a larger conversation about what that forecast looks like. That would come to you in January. You could reevaluate what that fund does and how it supports other programs. If you do deplete it too much further, you do put other programs at risk in the near future.
And that's the question that it's probably someplace on this floor, so I'm looking at the rest of the members because this is an opportunity that we can discuss it. I do think it needs to be left open for restoration, yet at the same time, I think we have to ask ourselves that important question that if we tax this fund by taking money out of it, eventually we're going to hurt another program. So I just want to be sure that that is something that we're all going to take into consideration prior to a vote. Question on the floor, Member Curtis.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm asking so many questions. So I spent about half my career in tourism, and my question is two things. This will be a one-time transfer. I'm hearing two different things on that, and I guess I'm not really up to speed. So Travel Salem has a different source. I mean, it's from transient occupancy tax, but that goes directly to them for their marketing and their operations, and this is a separate fund. Am I correct on that?
If I may provide some clarification, no, it is the same fund,
Okay.
the Cultural
Same
Tourism Fund. For every transient occupancy dollar we receive, we have a contract with Travel Salem that they get 25%.
Okay. So have we had a conversation with Travel Salem about how this might be a ripple effect to them and reduce their operations costs? Or I'm just curious about that.
Mr. Mayor, comment, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. My motion didn't anticipate cutting any of the budgeted programs. This is strictly out of the working capital or out of the savings part of that fund.
Okay.
So it won't actually impact this one-time transfer that I proposed in my motion would not impact any of the cultural programs. It would not impact Travel Salem. Wouldn't impact any of those things through a one-time transfer. It would strictly take out of the savings account portion of that.
Okay,
for
I
lack of a
appreciate
better
that.
term. Yeah.
Thank you, Member Curtis. Question on the floor, Member Dixon.
I just want to clarify, the transfer is from the working capital in the Cultural and Tourism Fund, correct? Thank you.
Yes.
And with that transfer, and CFO, and just make sure we're hearing this clearly, with that transfer, this will refund those positions we've cut?
Yes, that's the current motion.
For how long?
So this is a one-time transfer that's proposed, and similar to other actions the Budget Committee or the City Council make, you can't bind a future Budget Committee or City Council.
Right.
So it's a one-time transfer.
So I just want to make sure that we understand that. Question on the floor, Member Geyer.
I'm just kind of trying to clarify, Chair Brown, what you kind of mentioned earlier. Was it earmarked for anything else? I mean, you mentioned it was a savings, Mayor Horry, but is it just a savings?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So it's beginning working capital fund balance. say loosely a savings account. We are anticipating a declining fund balance over the next 5 years. So it is intended to support the programs that it currently supports in the Cultural Tourism Fund. I will say I don't think the one-time transfer would impact the next 5 years of programming.
Thank you.
Questions on the floor? Yes, Member Nordyke.
Thank you, Josh. Looking at page 312 for folks to follow along. So page 312 of our massive phone book of a budget document talks about our Cultural and Tourism Tot Fund. And CFO, I know you're saying that you anticipate that fund going down, but I need some clarification then. I see that, yes, we're no longer getting ARPA funds. Those ARPA funds are phasing out. They're one-time funds. I get it. And I see that we received U.S. Department of the Treasury federal grants in budget year, fiscal year 2022. We don't anticipate getting those again. I see that. But what I am seeing is that it looks like our TOTs have been steadily going up over the last 3 years. In actual fiscal year 2022, we received over $4.3 million in transient occupancy taxes, which was considerably higher than what was budgeted, which was just about 3.6. So the next year, fiscal year 2023, we budgeted for getting $4.19 million in transient occupancy taxes, but we ended up actually getting almost 4.7. And so accordingly, we are continuing to revise and show more optimism in taxes continuing to increase, which makes sense to me because we have more hotels in Salem now. We have more tourism in Salem now. So I agree that, yeah, our federal funds, as of today, are going away, but it looks like we're making more in taxes. So to me, I have more optimism about the future of this fund and whether we would be depleting working capital. Where am I missing something here?
Yeah, I really appreciate the question. So if you look from the budget for fiscal year 2024 to the recommended 2025, you will see a decrease there. So we're not anticipating an increase in transient occupancy tax revenue for next year. So we did see a substantial return to normal after the pandemic for the last several years. It's somewhat plateaued at this point. And I would point out, if you look at the revenues at transient occupancy tax at 5.2 coming in, then if you go to the bottom, total expenditures at 5.6 million, so we are anticipating spending down that fund balance slightly. And then if you were to look at the 5-year forecast for the Cultural Tourism Fund, you would look at increased transfers in future years for deferred needs at some of the historic structures, which is one of the big responsibilities of this fund. So the one-time snapshot for this year isn't the best reflection of future needs.
Is there additional question on the floor? Yes, Member Russell.
The question's most likely already been answered with the city attorney with regards to the constraints of the TOT fund. Because my point was, or my question was, just with the area that we've already looked at, while there's devastating cuts and impacts on the library, there were significant impacts in lots of areas, and there's significant impacts in a lot of areas that we haven't looked at yet. And so the original question was, why the focused view on the library and restoring it to 100%, while there is pain and problems throughout the budget. So I suspect that the answer to that is that the limitations of the TOT fund will allow it to be used for the library and perhaps some of these other ancillary things, where many of the other reductions that are in the proposed budget would not be eligible for that funding.
I would say yes, but I'm going to lean over to Mr. City Attorney or Manager.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is exactly why this is the appropriate action. Is these dollars are specifically intended for these purposes. We can't use them to supplement police, fire, general operations. We can only use them for cultural facilities and activities.
And if I might put the city manager on the spot, because you previously stated that you were in support of the original motion, are you in support of the amended motion?
I am absolutely in support of the amended motion.
Okay, thank you.
And will implement as directed.
Good question. Next on the floor, Vice Chair, question.
Thank you, Chair Brown. I'm going to ask the city attorney to step back and answer the question. You indicated that at Bend, a similar or somewhat similar situation came into play, and it sounds like the city lost, and that so I'm wondering if that should happen, what does that mean?
If that were to happen, if we were to get challenged on these expenditures, and I want to reiterate that I am not certain whether we could use TOT funds on relay races and movies in the park. I will need to determine that when we come back to you. But if we were to be challenged and to lose that challenge, and we've already expended those transit occupancy tax funds, we would need to replace them with general fund.
So to follow up that, and thank you, Mr. City Attorney. So we have this amended motion on the floor, and it sounds like to me there's still some work that we need to do just to make sure that we're going to stay within the parameters. Can we actually suspend this amended motion?
So to clarify, there's been a motion on the floor and a motion to amend the main motion. So right now you're considering the amendment. If you want, you can take a vote on that, and if it's approved, then you go to the main motion and consider the main motion as amended.
Okay.
If you want to toll consideration of both motions, you can do that as well. That would take a motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair Brown. So the reason that I wanted to keep these separate is because I hadn't done any research on the other the movies, the relays, and the concerts. I completely support funding them. Don't get me wrong. I just hadn't had the conversation with the city attorney about them on whether they would qualify. So that's why I was trying to keep them separate and distinct in the motion, because I had done that work on the library, and I felt really confident that that would pass the test, pass the smell test, so to speak, because I talked to the city attorney. That's why I was trying to keep them separate. So if there is a question, the library question has already been asked and answered. So that was my preference. It's not because I don't support those things, it's because I hadn't done any work on them.
Any additional? Yes, Member Hoy.
Thank you, Chair. To the city attorney, if something were to come of Orla's challenge, what would that do to the timeline? Would that prevent us from making this transfer, or would we move ahead and follow any kind of litigation, to use one of your words?
Sure. It depends on the timing. Obviously, the budget's going to go to the city council in short order, and it's going to needs to be approved before July 1. If a challenge were to be made, I don't know how quickly the court would consider that, or whether the other party would try to seek some sort of court order to delay our action on that. So there's a lot to be determined on that. Obviously, we would keep the budget committee and the council informed if that were to happen.
Please.
I'm going to follow. I have another question, but it's for Josh. Thank you, sir. Are all hotels in Salem currently paying into TOT? I know there was a bit of a delay for the Holman, and is that happening yet?
That's a good question. I don't have specific information for individual hotels, but in general, yes, every hotel in Salem is required to pay the transient occupancy tax.
And I think there's another question on the floor. Member Nordyke.
Thank you. I also support finding whatever money we can to fund the JC relays, the movies in the park, and these other opportunities. With that being said, my recommendation, my peers, we consider these motions one at a time for a couple of reasons. My most important one, the city attorney has had an opportunity to vet the legality of the mayor's motion. The city attorney has not had the opportunity to vet the legality of Member Cohen's motion. We will be back here 1 week from today. Let's give the city staff a week to look into this further, to look into Member Cohen's motion and come back to us with the information, the answers about the Holman, the answers about whether we can use the Cultural and Tourism Fund for these purposes. I would feel a lot more comfortable voting it after my city attorney has vetted it. So let's, we'll be back in 1 week. My recommendation is we proceed with a vote on the mayor's motion tonight and revisit this topic because it's important. And it's extremely important. So, but I do agree with doing this in separate motions and to give our staff some time to make sure that they've dotted the i's and crossing the t's.
And so having said that, since there's an amended motion on the floor by Member Cohen, we need to, in essence, table that one, and so we'll have to vote on it. So we'll have to vote on the amended motion that we will revisit that next week. Mr. City Attorney.
Mr. Chair, this is the most I've spoken at a budget committee in quite some time.
We love it, though. We love it.
So you would need to, someone in the committee would need to make a motion to table the amended motion.
I put that out there, hoping that one of my members would pick that up.
I move to table the amended motion, the amended motion.
Second.
And it was seconded by Member Dixon. Got it. All in favor, say aye. Showing of hands. Any opposed?
So,
showing of hands.
Were we ready to call the vote on this? Sorry.
Yeah, they're raising your hand was an aye.
Oh, I can start over.
Do we have discussion after the motion?
We can have discussion now before we do it.
Yeah, that's why I was jumping in here.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so for clarification, because this could sound really bad if we table or vote no, we're voting to not consider Member Cohen's amendment
tonight. It doesn't mean that it's going away. We're just going to table it till next week.
Yep, get that. But Member Chris Hoy's motion is still alive.
Still alive and breathing.
Thank you for the clarification. So I'm fully informed before I make a vote. So.
Okay, perfect. So the amended motion has been given to us by the vice chair, and it was seconded by Member Dixon, if I'm not mistaken. Another question on the floor. Yes, Member Varney.
Thank you very much. I'm a little confused. How can we have two motions on the floor?
All the time.
So the original motion was by Mr. Mayor. And if you would like, I can have him read it again. And then that particular motion was amended.
Right.
By Member Cohen. We've now decided to vote on one motion, his. The amended one, we're going to table it until next week.
It was never actually amended.
This is going to be a long night. Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you. So you actually at this point have three motions on the floor. The main motion.
Every time you get up, it's like there's another one.
It's like, well, the good news is you can only have three. So you have the main motion made by the mayor, the motion to amend the main motion, and now you've got a motion to table the motion to amend. So procedurally, you'll take that last motion first. If you table the motion to amend, then that takes care of that motion until next week, and you can move on to the main motion. Easy as pie.
And what kind of pie is that again?
Mincemeat.
That's not one of my favorites. Okay, so with the amended motion, the one by Member Cohen, that is the one that we're going to table. We have that. We're going to vote on it. We're going to vote on it. And that's the one that Member Belichick's interrupted us because we're on the same page. Okay, so with that particular vote that we're going to amend, hold off till next week, I would like to have a show of hands. All in favor of that? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. And just for clarity, that particular amended motion, we will revisit it next week. Now we'll go back to the original motion that's on the floor by Mr. Mayor.
Would you like me to restate it?
Yes.
Okay. My motion was, I move that the proposed library reductions be restored to the fiscal year 2025 budget and funded with the transfer from the Cultural and Tourism Fund working capital.
And it has already been seconded, and we've already had questions. There's another question on the floor. Member Hoy.
Thank you. Josh, can you tell me and everyone, what is the timeline for funding with this? How long? I think in particular about the folks who testified emotionally about losing their jobs. How long will they have a job under this funding?
I think that's an interesting question. Right now, it's proposed to fund fiscal year 2025. Any further changes in fiscal year 2026 would rely on the same budget cycle. So the city manager would propose a budget for fiscal year 2026. So whether or not that included these reductions, again, would be up to the city manager.
Okay. Keep your jobs until the next fiscal year ends, right? Okay.
Correct.
And we're going to, are we going to have discussion before the vote? Or will this be?
This is that
point of
discussion.
discussion. Thank you. I just want to say that I don't think this is a good thing. A stopgap is not a solution for funding for something that's so important to so many in this community, obviously. I just think it's going to keep those people in their jobs, and that's what matters to me most if we make this attempt. But I certainly want better from our budget for what the people want.
Are there any additional thoughts or questions? Yes, Member Guyer.
Just for clarification, we're not putting a dollar amount on this. It's just to restore
Correct.
the library. So
Restoration.
whatever is needed. Perfect. Thank you. Just want
Correct.
to clarify that.
Any other follow-up comments or questions? Yes, Member Dixon.
Even though we're not putting a dollar number on it, I'd like to ask if the intention of the motion is to reverse the recommended reductions in this budget, or is it also to reverse the reductions that were made in February?
Great question, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. No, my motion was strictly to restore the proposed reductions that were in the city manager's recommended budget. It doesn't go retro, and unfortunately, it doesn't restore any of those previous cuts. I would love to be able to do that. I don't think we have the resources to do that right now. But
Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question.
Yes, Vice Chair.
Thank you. But we want to state that those were vacancies. Again, we didn't let anyone go, those previous cuts. So, it would have been people that could have been hired, but this one would be cutting people that are working, so.
I'm still feeling a little bit of unease with our members. Seems like there's more discussion for this. Yes, Mr. CFO? Was there?
No, it's me, Phillips.
Member Phillips, yes, please go ahead.
At this point, I think we're in discussion, so I just want to say I will be supporting this motion. I think that our mayor's done an excellent job in this incredible difficult times that we have with our budget to try and give us the stopgap measure to keep our library as whole as possible. I think that our library has been, disproportionately impacted by the cuts to vacancies. And so I support this wholeheartedly. But I do want everybody who's testified and everybody in our community to understand this just buys us time. This gives us 1 year, the fiscal year of 2025. So, in my opinion, there's still a profound need for additional revenue. And, every year moving forward, this is going to be the conversation. So, I'm in support of exploring as many different options that have a likelihood of getting enough community support as not to be undone. And I think one of those things is the structuring the operations fee in a way that is more fair. I know that staff are maxed out and are doing a lot of things at the same time right now, but that is something that I also have concern about delay. But I know that's not what we're talking about. There's a structural problem. I support the motion. I intend to vote for it.
Additional comments or questions on the floor? Yes, Member Nordyke.
Thank you. Well, I voted against the cuts to library earlier this year, so this is a no-brainer for me. I will, of course, be supporting this motion. And we heard from some incredibly powerful testimony tonight that moved some of us to tears. And I can't imagine being told that I'm about to be laid off by July 1. When I'm a public servant, when I'm here to support people in finding their passion, in finding a job, in finding a safe space, that rare third space that is vanishing, in helping people discover their dreams, follow their passions, and become the person they were meant to be. That's what libraries do. Libraries give people hope. Libraries give people skills. Libraries are tools of democracy. They promote science and a pursuit of justice. They help right wrongs and they inspire people to live their very best lives. They help the single moms out there, including folks like my mother growing up, to give a place to send their kids, to learn how to read, to participate and show them where the library is, show them how to find it, show them around the stacks. I thought the library was an incredible place growing up. I remember walking out with books and I thought, isn't someone gonna stop me? It's incredible. And I've spoken publicly before on the impact the library's had on my family and a person with disabilities in my family, without which the library was her only outlet to the world as she got older. It was her only outlet. So it's personal for me, but it's personal for the hundreds of people who have been rallying outside City Hall, who lined up to testify here tonight, who testified in droves, in writing. I want to say thank you. Thank you to every last one of you. I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Member Nordyke. Additional questions, comments on, yes, Vice Chair.
Thank you again. With both of my fellow members, I also want to give solid support to the library, and I am so disappointed that we've had to cut the vacancies before, but until we find revenue, these cuts are going to continue. So I encourage, and I have encouraged all of those that have written to me to make sure that you go to the Revenue Task Force and share your comments, as profound as they have been, so that they too make sure that they find some sort of secure funding in the long term. So again, I'm in favor of this motion. I am so grateful to Mayor Hoy for investigating this and finding that this is something that we can do, and I am incredibly grateful for that opportunity for all of us.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Member Manville, do you have another? Nope. Member Curtis.
Well, I too just want to say that I read every comment that came in our packet that was about this big, and I was very moved by many, many of the people that provided testimony. It was heartfelt. It was thoughtful. I mean, they expressed, you know, what kind of a society do we want to live in Salem? I mean, it was very, very thoughtful, and it was very personal. A lot of them were very personal. And it just really moved me, and I just want to thank everybody that has come tonight, that provided that testimony. It just showed how much our community does care for having a community that is welcoming and, you know, has access to a wonderful facility like a library. And let me also say that if we are going to be funding economic development and business recruitment efforts, which it looked like to me in my review of the documents, nobody's going to want to move a business to a community that doesn't have a decent library, that has parks with, you know, grass up to your shoulders, brown, you know, unwatered plants. I mean, it all works together, and we have to have that kind of a community if we're going to even do business development. So thank you to the library people.
Thank you, Member Curtis. Was there another comment? Member Cohen, Member Villar-Brandel? None? Yes. Member Varney.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I agree with everyone else. I mean, the testimony was absolutely heart-wrenching, and I read through everything, and I feel like I can breathe a sigh of relief, because it was one of my greatest fears that we were going to have to close the West Salem Library. There are a lot of seniors that rely on that just walk across the parking lot and use it. And it's a place of safety, and there's internet, and there's books, and every time I go in there, I see kids using it as well as adults. And so, thank you for making the motion.
Thank you, Member Varney. Yes, Member Vieira-Brandel.
Since you called on me, I will. I don't think there's much that I can say that others haven't said in our testimony that we heard tonight and that we all got to read. I just want to express my support of the motion. And if you'll bear with me for a moment, I'll share some occupational therapy philosophies of mine. We believe as occupational therapists that the things that we do, the ways we occupy our time, impact who we are, the way we see ourselves, the way others see us. They impact where we feel we belong, the communities that we connect with, and they ultimately impact who we become. And I think that we heard tonight that our libraries are a testament to that they are more than just reading books, that they bring hope to us, they bring opportunities, they inspire people. As somebody who used my public library, and as a brown kid that grew up in a very white suburb in Kansas, that was one of the ways that I saw myself. And I got to transform who I was in my own mind, because I did not see people that looked like me in leadership positions. I did not see people that looked like me achieving things or being shown achieving things. And I just think about all the people that spoke tonight and all the many, many people in our city who find themselves in books, who find themselves in stories, who find themselves on the services that our libraries offer, who find themselves in the resources that are available, who check out cooking equipment, who check out camping equipment, who get to experience new things. So thank you, Mayor Hoy, for your motion tonight, and I'll be very supportive of it.
Thank you, Member Vieira-Brandel. Yes, Member Hoy.
Thank you, sir. I can't keep from thinking about the folks that spoke, especially those who spoke about losing the Spanish language programs. How were those choices made in this process? And is that a question we can
It is a
ask
question.
of
It's a question that the city manager will have to answer.
Yeah, it's really pretty straightforward. We have a contract. The employees are unionized, and when it comes to layoffs, we refer to the contract. And the contract basically says the last person hired is the first person laid off. And in this particular instance, the majority of the employees who have been recently hired are coming to us with bilingual.
Please continue.
Is there any way to change that and do more to meet the needs of the community? Maybe not by us, but how do we fix that to meet the population needs?
We would have to have a different contract.
Which would be a different meeting.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So I'll have the final words in regards to the vote that we're going to take, because I will ask the recorder to actually do this vote with your help. I think there's value. There's value when we can sit here and have a conversation and be civil, right? I think there's value in that. I think there's value when people can agree to disagree and not be disagreeable. But I did hear on the floor tonight that although this gives us time for a year, we will have to revisit this. This does not change the fact that we still have a budget that we still got to make sure that's balanced. And so when we think about the jobs that they'll have their job, everything comes back to normal, we still got some hard decisions we have to make collectively as a group. And so for the individuals that were here tonight and their support of the library, I say spot on. But there's a part of the conversation I think that we have overlooked, and not intentionally, but I think there's value there. When we think about the library positions and we think about closing the doors of the library, that impacts families, it impacts the community, it impacts all of us. And I think about the safety of the people that are in the library. When we have to let go of jobs, it not only impacts those families, but it also impacts the families of the first responders who may have to go to a library. And I say that, and I put that in the space because it'll challenge our thinking. Meaning, if there is an incident that takes place at the library, libraries are not immune from someone showing up meaning to cause violence. And so when we think about the libraries, we also have to think about those individuals who are our first responders. I've heard the word together tonight multiple times. And I'm a firm believer that if we're going to make those changes that are sustainable for the entire city, we have to find some sense of harmony when we are talking about people and their livability and their jobs. Because if you're working in the library, that is important. If the librarian calls 911 because there's an incident that takes place, that person who shows up, that job is also important. Jobs are important, period. And I'm a firm believer that we have to find a way to make sure that to have these types of conversations, yes, they're uncomfortable, but we have to have these types of courageous conversations if we're going to make some growth happen down the road. So, having said that, Madam Recorder, would you please call the roll?
Member Belicheks?
I'm so happy to be the first to say aye.
Member Cohen?
Aye.
Member Allen?
Aye.
Member Manville?
Heck yes.
Member Vieira Brandel?
Aye.
Member Phillips?
Heck yes.
Member Gwen?
Aye.
Member Julie Hoy?
Aye.
Member Nordyke?
Aye.
Member Varney?
Aye.
Member Chris Hoy?
Aye.
Member Dixon?
Aye.
Member Curtis?
Aye.
Member Gayer?
Aye.
Vice Chair Nishioka?
Aye.
Chair Brown?
Aye. And the motion passes. A good sigh of relief because I feel like we are making some progress. It's not easy, but nonetheless, it is progress. Mr. CFO, I don't think your presentation, you're not done yet, are you?
We're actually done with that results area, so our budget manager is doing the next area.
I have a question on the floor. Member Dixon? Member Cohen? Rock, paper, scissors. Who wants to go first?
I have several questions. I think I can submit some of them in writing. And these don't have to be addressed tonight, but at some point I would like to know what the impact on the usability and the accessibility on our parks is going to be of deferring maintenance. And I think parks are under this section.
It is.
And at some point, and I believe the community development block grant money is also under this section, is that right?
I believe so, yes.
At some point, I would like to have someone address why the community development block grant money for 2025 is going to focus on acquiring land. As I look at it, it appears that in 2024, that money is funding some social service grants, and that in 2025, most of those grants will not be funded by the community development block grant, and that money will be spent on acquiring land. And I'd like to know why that is.
Please.
Let me get my green button on here. Kristen Rutherford, Director of Community Planning and Development. We are continuing to budget funding for social services grants. Our CDBG regulations limit the percentage of our total entitlement that can be spent on social services at 15% of our annual entitlement. So as we go through our process in this upcoming year, we will be coming back in another month or two with awards, and those will include social services. We are regularly oversubscribed for social services and have many more requests than we have funding that we can provide to meet that need. The reason that we've budgeted money for acquisition is because HUD also has a limit on how much money you can keep year after year sort of in the HUD bank, and that's limited at 1.5 times your annual entitlement. We have had some challenges over the last few years coming out of COVID due to project delays, so from our grantees tied to difficulty finding contractors, supply chain issues, projects that have been delayed because interest rates have increased. And so we've been hovering above that 1.5%. So we changed our strategy this year so that rather than funding more construction projects that will take longer to get the funding out the door, shifting the focus to an acquisition so that we can get that that money spent down within our HUD bank account and acquire land for affordable housing that then could be developed further down the road.
May I follow up?
Absolutely.
What does that decision mean for funds for social service grants from the CDBG?
That has no impact.
No impact?
No impact.
Then why does it look like in the table that for 2024, there's a considerable amount of money for grants, and then 2025, I think it's down to 400,000?
I'd have to go back. I don't have the book right in front of me to go back and
Director, for a second. Member Dixon, can you share with us where you're looking at, just so the members will know?
67.
So the
page, I'm sorry, 306 and 307 is that's the specific line items. And actually on 307 is where rebudgeted projects.
Yes, so the larger amount that you're seeing is grant funding that's carried over from year to year. So let's say in year 2022 or 2021, we awarded grant funding, but that agency did not draw down all those funds. That gets carried over from year to year, which makes it look like there is a much larger portion of the budget that is going to social services. But in the new year, fiscal year, that we're limited to the cap for awarding new grants.
Okay. Then may I follow up?
Please.
What happens to the other agencies that were getting money?
If they are a prior grant recipient and they have not drawn down and expended all of their funds, those funds continue to be carried forward until they have drawn down that award.
Okay, but they're, I'm sorry.
And then if they have applied for new grant funding, then that is a competitive process that goes through a review and selection and then award process. So again, the amount each year for new grant awards is capped at a percentage of our total entitlement. So we will have, and always do have, applicants that will not receive awards because we're capped at how much we can provide in grants.
So is there not a reduction in the amount that you're going to be giving for awards for like Center for Hope and Safety and Integrated Supports for Living?
So for folks that are applicants in our current grant cycle, we are awarding the full amount we are able to award.
Okay.
Okay? So we may be awarding less than they asked for, but that's because of the cap.
Okay. Then one more follow-up, and again, this is not necessarily for tonight. I'd just like to know what the overall impact on grants for social service agencies is for this year compared to last year, regardless of the source.
And
I don't need the answer now.
Sure. From CDBG funds, every year we award the maximum we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
But my question is broader than that now.
So
I would like to know what the outlook is for grant funds for social services across the budget.
And Director Rutherford, I'm going to suggest that with those questions, Member Dixon, if we could share those with staff and get a chance to get those answered, please.
If I could just add one more clarification.
Please.
We have historically had $400,000 of general fund money in addition to CDBG that we have provided out to social service agencies as grant funds. That has been eliminated from the proposed budget. So we only have the CDBG funds available for grants to provide social services.
The only question I have left is how much is that?
We won't know that. We make contingent awards. We won't know that until probably August when we find out what the federal budget is for our entitlement.
Thank you.
Okay.
And with that question, Member Dixon, which is a great question, like how much is that? Would your next question would be, since that carries over year by year, was there going to be a follow-up question after that money is carried over?
I didn't have one, but please.
Well, I'm just trying to, predict or just kind of like, put our cards on the table, because if that money is carried over year after year, I guess my next question is going to be, can it be used for something else? And I think there'll probably be a question for the director.
So a couple of things. First of all, I would like to propose that I come back at the next meeting or provide in writing a 5-year history of our annual awards, how much that is, and compare that to the total CDBG entitlement we receive every year.
Perfect.
So that would give you a better idea of the history and how it's being used.
Thank you, Director.
Secondly, if we don't award it to social services, we could use it, but only for things that qualify for the Community Development Block Grant Program.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I was getting to.
Yeah, it's
because I get the impression that we've opened up something here tonight, and so there's going to be a lot of questions about, funds being used for this or used for that. So thank you, Director.
Yes.
Appreciate it. So, members, we will continue on with our budget manager. And her report tonight will be question on the floor. Yes, Member Cohen.
So everybody, this is not going to be a very popular motion that I'm going to submit to you. And I'll get to the meat of why I'm making this motion after I make it. So I move that all non-union managerial positions, that their salaries are frozen to the FY24 levels.
Say that motion one more time.
I move that all non-union managerial supervisor positions, that their salaries are frozen to the FY24 adopted levels.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor.
I would actually have a question for the city attorney. I don't believe that that's budget committee purview at that level of detail.
And we're having a discussion here and it hasn't been seconded. So, Mr. City Attorney, we're going to turn to you. Because we're having a discussion without it being seconded.
Why don't we get a second first?
Exactly. So the motion is on the...
I'll second for the purpose of discussion.
Thank you. Member Gwen has seconded, so now we have discussion. Thank you, Mr. City Attorney.
I might ask the CFO for help on this one, but if it's a line item reduction across departments based on those employees, I think that would be within the budget committee's purview.
Mr. CFO?
Yeah, I don't disagree.
And I have a question. Is there an amount that we're talking about? Is that everyone in the managerial position?
So, friends, the reason why, right, is that if you are a union member, you have to, the city has to, the organization has to go with the contract that has been ratified, right? I am a union member for the Oregon Health Authority, so my contract is sacred, right? It's not going to get moved. My boss is a non-union managerial position. Those positions are afforded the COLA increases and other inflationary increases that all union members get. The reason why I'm doing this, making this motion, is because there are a lot of cuts that are happening in this budget. And to me, from my experience in the Navy, from my experience everywhere else, leaders take the first hit, first and always. If we are serious about cutting positions, if we're serious about cutting programs, then I think that it is well within our purview to ask of our non-union managers and supervisors to take that cut, which really isn't a cut. It is just keeping them consistent with what is their current salaries.
It's a freeze.
It's a freeze.
Thank you, Member Cohen. Mr. Mayor, comment on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would strongly oppose this motion. I think we already ask so much of our managers. I don't think it's reasonable to ask them. It is a cut when you freeze their salary and the cost of living continues to go up. We are already asking them to do so much work, so many more jobs than just what that we hired them for. I think this is an unreasonable request, and I'm not sure what the outcome would be in terms of benefit to the budget. So I cannot support this motion.
Additional comments, questions on the floor? Yes, Member Guyer.
Do you have a specific example of what a freeze would be and what that would be saving us? Just a specific position that we can kind of look at?
If you go to page 451 of your budget book, the city manager's current salary and benefits, $262,240. For FY25, it goes up to $275,860. Now, for the average minimum wage employee working at McDonald's, working at Starbucks, working at wherever, they don't get the COLA increases, they don't get the inflationary increases. That is only to public employees, right? So what I'm asking is, and I know it's not going to be $2 million, but it will be a significant chunk of change, something that could even be used to, say, have splash pads, or just to help out our budget. Am I asking this freeze to last for 5 years, for 10 years? No, that's ridiculous, and we're going to lose out on our managers. What I'm saying is, this is a cuts budget. We're asking for all of our city members to put up cuts within our budget. Leaders need to lead by example and take that cut with them. I understand there's some hesitation with this, but that's my view.
Thank you, Member Cohen. Question on the floor. Wait, before I get to you, I need to get Member Phillips.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't think I'm surprised by the request. So I get the motion, and I imagine it's probably got a lot of political support, but I just don't think that people have an accurate sense of the paucity of administration that we have. I would be shocked if we don't have the leanest administration of any of the top 10 cities in the state of Oregon. And having served as a counselor for the last 3.5 years, when we only had one city manager for a city of 180,000 people, that is not tenable. There is an amount of work that needs to happen. I mean, we have 1,350 total city employees, and when you've only got a budget this year of 6 or 7 FTEs for the city manager's office, that's absurd. So the idea that we're gonna freeze it, I get that that's a talking point, but I just don't think people understand how incredibly slim we already are. We have 2 deputy city managers now, but they're really just repurposed directors. And to replace any of these people would require 2 to 3 FTEs. They're literally doing the work of 2 or 3 people. So, I mean, I get that it's a talking point, but I couldn't disagree more. I'm not surprised by it, but there's a risk when you don't have people doing the work of leadership. And when we lost our city manager, when he retired last time, the 180 that we were hit with in terms of, our interim city manager did a great job, but we don't have a bench. We don't have any we did not have any succession planning. And I think it gives like a false narrative. Like our prior city manager said, there's no issues, we have plenty of staff. And then a month later, we're being told we're short 308 FTEs per year. So I want there to be open and honest, communication from our leadership to all of us so that we are actually getting a real sense of like the work that's required to be done. And I want all of us to remember that the amount of work that they're doing, I mean, the number of positions that have been merged to create these positions, like I don't know, it's crazy. So, I mean, I get that, 275 seems like a lot, but it's a town of 180,000 people. And when this council that I was part of, went to recruit, we found that we were not paying enough. We had trouble getting qualified candidates to apply for the position. Our peer cities are paying more. So I don't want to risk a brain drain here. I think that Keith's doing a great job in a very difficult time. I'm so glad that we have him. I think we're very fortunate. And I don't want to risk any of our leadership that we have right now. I mean, this is a tough city to run, especially right now. So it's, yeah.
Thank you, Member Phillips. Thank you. We're going to hear from our city manager.
Yes. The leadership team, as Member Cohen has indicated, is the leaders of this organization. They are the leaders of this organization, and we've already discussed this issue, and we had already agreed that as a leadership team, we are not going to take raises this year. I would agree with the mayor strongly that the other managers in the organization, I think that is asking too much. But the leadership team, the department directors, we have already agreed among ourselves that we will not take a COLA or any increase this year.
Member Dixon, yes.
May I follow up on that? How will the other manager level salaries be determined?
How do you mean? I'm not sure I'm following the question.
Is there a negotiation
There is not.
to determine manager level salaries?
We have a pay plan. Each position is in a pay plan at a specific pay and classification. They have a step that they're in, so it's predetermined.
If I may, Member Dixon, are you referring to the cost of living adjustment?
I'm just wondering how. Yeah, I mean, the motion is to freeze salaries, so I'm wondering how in normal times those salaries are determined. And I hear that there's a salary schedule. Okay, and so this would be stepping away. To freeze would be stepping away from that salary schedule. Is that right?
It would just be freezing the salary schedule we have where it is right now for the people that are occupying the positions. I would say on department head and the executive and myself.
Okay, that's for department heads and executives, but are there other manager level positions that are non-union?
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Look around the room here. They are here watching this meeting this evening.
There's several in the room.
And I'm sorry, so they all have a salary schedule. Who determines that salary schedule?
Here comes Krishna. Thank you.
Krishna Namburi, Deputy City Manager for Enterprise Services Department. So we actually have 5 comparable cities that we compare our pay structure to. So the HR Operations Manager, Michelle Bennett, and her team are constantly looking for those pay structure, and our pay structure is based on those comparable cities' pay structure.
Okay, so there's a determination made by the HR department,
Mm-hmm.
and then that becomes the
The
salary
pay structure
schedule.
for the management staff, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good follow-up. Was there? Yes, Member Curtis.
Thank you. So as far as if you're topped out at the top of your classification or whatever you call it with the city, top step, you could still get a COLA cost of living increase, and I assume that that is equivalent to what the union negotiates for their contract. Is that accurate?
I don't want to answer that.
That's the way it was with the state, anyway.
Generally, yes. Actually, in the front of your book, and if you look in the workforce changes section behind the budget message, we list the cost of living adjustments proposed in the budget for non-represented staff as well as the unions. I will note we have 2 unions in negotiations right now, but non-rep staff are currently scheduled for a 3% cost of living adjustment. Executive leadership, no cost of living adjustment.
Additional questions or comments? Yes, Member Nordike.
Thank you. Looking again at page 451, as noted by Member Cohen, it says analysis of positions and wages. And it does show a difference between, say, the salary for the city manager for fiscal year 24 and then the salary for the city manager for fiscal year 25, and it does show an increased amount. So I want to make sure that seems at odds with what you just said. So what am I getting wrong here?
If I may, I think there's two things that are going on. One is that pay step. So we have merit increases that happen for certain staff. If you are at the top of the pay plan, you only receive a COLA if there's one available. So there are merit increases. Department directors are on a pay plan similar to non-represented staff, so that merit increase is still included. There's no cost of living adjustment outside of that.
So, City Manager, I thought I heard you say that you and the leadership team would not be receiving an increase in pay, but it looks like you are. I'm confused.
I work on a contract, so whatever the contract says, but I am not taking a cost of living increase this year, and I'm not anticipating any other increase.
Okay.
So with that question, Member Nordike, and so CFO, I need some clarity. So the salary for a city manager is $262,240, and then that's for this current year. But then it goes to $275,860. That's what you're asking. So that increase, that's not a part of, I guess you had mentioned earlier that there's a freeze, that you guys are not taking additional money. But I think there is a discrepancy with the question she's asking, like why is there an increase there?
I apologize for any confusion. So the city manager's salary in particular is controlled by the city council. Of course, that they can set that salary, and if he chooses not to take it, that's up to him. We still budgeted for a merit increase in case the city council chose to give it to him.
And so for clarity, for that particular salary to increase to get to the 275, that still has to go before the council, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
It does.
It's true, but I'm only using that as an example. There are several other managers here who are all scheduled to receive an increase. And that's, I was just mentioning it because it's on page 451, but the CFO, the police chief, the several other department heads all look like they're scheduled to receive an increase. And that's why I was seeking a point of clarification.
Thank you.
And that is the merit increase in alignment with the pay scale.
Did that help, Member Nordike? It did. Okay. So we still have, there's a motion on the floor and we're still discussing. Are there any additional questions or comments or thoughts that we need to hear? Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I was hoping that maybe Krishna or someone who's in a position to answer this could just give us an idea when we're talking about, so not the leadership team and not union members, which is who I think would now be subject to this motion. What are the positions we're talking about? Can you talk about some of those jobs and some of those services so we know what we're talking about here?
Yeah, we can. So we are talking about the assistant directors, division managers, manager 1, 2, 3, supervisor 1, 2, 3. So these are the classifications that we are looking at.
So we're talking about maybe a lieutenant at the police department, maybe a deputy chief, maybe I'm not sure which positions at the fire department, a battalion chief.
Deputy chief also in the fire department. So I do want to kind of, I'm also your HR director, so I'm just going to talk about a little bit on the compaction, when we are looking at retention of the city staff, the area where we are really struggling is in management positions. It's because if you look at the number of hours wise, the union staff are restricted to work 40 hours a week, whatever that work schedule is. But for the management staff, there is no limit on the number of hours that we can, they need to work. So pretty much every management position that we are looking at in the city, they're doing multiple jobs. Most of them, I have to say. So what we are kind of noticing the trend over the past 12 months, I have to say, especially with the budget deficit and the budget conversations that we have been having, most of the management staff have been like, no, I'm kind of done. They're trying to balance their personal life and professional life, and they're ready to quit, or some of them actually have chosen to go to other organizations because they just cannot, it's not a sustainable model for most of them. I think that's kind of the situation. I can say pretty much everybody here, the management staff, everybody is under the same situation, right? I'm not kind of saying the leadership team, I'm talking about the next level. So I am very much concerned about freezing salaries for management staff because it will be extremely difficult to retain management staff at this point. The other piece that I also want to say, you want to maintain a certain salary difference between employees and their supervisors, right? Otherwise, what we have seen, and I know Michelle Bennett has done quite a bit of study on this. A lot of employees don't want to apply for management positions because that was a situation that we were under. Sometimes the managers were making less than the union staff because the union is negotiating the pay increases, and we were freezing management salaries. So the staff are making more than the supervisor, so we couldn't really get people apply for those positions internally, and we were bringing people from externally from outside. They didn't want to stay with the city for too long. The other piece that I do want to say that I know this year it shows 3% cost of living increases for the management staff. Pretty much every union that kind of either has negotiated already or in the process of negotiating, the cost of living increases are significantly higher than 3%. So we are also in that situation. So I just don't want to I know we have 2 open contracts right now. I'm concerned about what that results into because the management staff are only getting 3%. So that means we might get entry into that issue again.
Madam Director, it seems to me that we have entered into a salary conversation, which is still part of the budget. And I think about the members that are here. Are there additional questions or thoughts that you're processing now that we need to ask of staff so they can prepare for next week? I'm just curious. I just need to take a pulse. Are there additional questions about the salaries or whatnot? Because we still have a motion on the floor, so I just need to get a pulse. Any thoughts about salaries? Yes. Member Belichick.
Thank you, Chair Brown. Maybe more of a clarification. I think we breezed through it at the beginning. It's with our purview to make a line item recommendation, and is that literally the line of each employee on here?
I can't answer that.
So what I heard earlier was city attorney say, yeah, it would be within a line, and I think Josh confirmed it, but I didn't pick up whether that means reduce this department by the amount that is equivalent to the manager's pay increase, or if it was literally, we could say to the employee that they'd get less. So a little confusion on how deep our role is.
Mr. City Attorney?
It's a banner night for the city attorney. Just to confirm with the CFO though, but I understood the motion to apply to all non-represented employees. It would be a salary freeze to 2024 levels and we would make that corresponding change to each department budget.
Yes, that is correct. And I will say that it's across all funds, so it's not just the general fund where these employees are.
Yes, Mr. City Manager.
That's not what I heard Member Cohen say. I heard him direct his comments towards managers, not all unrepresented employees. That's an entirely different question.
You mind reading your motion again, please, sir?
Okay. I did not write down a motion, so it'll be best memory. And the intention is for the general fund. It is not for managers of the utility fund, unless that's illegal. Okay, so if it's illegal, then yes, it is only for managers, supervisors. It is not for the people torquing the wrenches.
Okay, so so the concern I'm about to bring is probably a concern that I, not myself have, but members here. So that motion that you shared earlier, we will have to vote on it. And so can you find a way just to make sure you can write it down to say it again? Because we'll have to vote on that before we move further. Mr. CFO.
I apologize for the sidebar. So we have a classification structure for non-represented employees. So in addition to managers, supervisors, includes analysts, executive assistants, confidential employees. Those are all non-represented employees. So if when you're stating the motion, if you could limit it to a particular classifications, examples, managers, supervisors, and perhaps it might benefit for some offline conversation and bringing something back if it's something that the committee wants to pursue.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Question on the floor. Before I get to you on the floor, Member Phillips, please go ahead.
I think my goal would be, I'd like to make a motion to table this so I make a motion to table this motion.
Second.
Okay, so to speak to my motion, I don't think we have like a written down set of words. So I would like this to be very clearly delineated. I would like to give my colleague and staff time to get their questions and stuff answered. And my goal would also be that staff can come prepared to, address this question. I think there's just too many moving parts to even take a crack at it. I'm not even sure what I would be voting on, and I would have to vote no. So in an effort to even understand what we're voting on, at best, I would vote to table this.
Okay, just for clarity, so thank you for that. Thank you for the motion and the second. Member Cohen, I do want to express the opportunity to talk, to share, because we will have to vote on that particular amendment.
Yeah, so the motion is that I move all non-representative, non-union manager, supervisor positions freeze salary to FY24 levels.
Yes, there's a motion to table that. I just wanted for the record so we can hear that. There's another question on the floor. Gwen, Member Gwen.
I was wondering if in that analysis of positions and wages, if someone could tell us which would be general fund? And is there a way for us, looking at the book, to determine like which fund is affected? And Josh walked away.
He's conferring with the city attorney.
Yeah, what's going on?
So we can think among ourselves. Question on the floor, Member Nordite.
I support the motion to table. I think it's an interesting idea, but I need more information. I think to Member Gwen's point, there are multiple funds that could be impacted. Our general fund is our most vulnerable fund. And we have a lot of positions, services, expenses, capital costs that are completely ungeneral fund related. So it would be helpful, and I've shared this with members of council before, if you want to bring a motion, I'd like to have a good sense of what its fiscal impact would be. And right now, I have no idea what that fiscal impact would be. So we'll be here next week, and the week after that, and the week after that. So I would support tabling it just so I can gather more information and give myself time to process. And I see a lot of question marks on my colleagues' faces. This feels like another great homework assignment for our staff to come back and see how much money would we actually save if we were to do this. And it's a big if, because I really appreciate what Director Namburi had to say about staff retention. When you lose staff, it costs more to replace them. That's if you can find someone willing to do the job at the same price, which you often can't. And even if you can, it actually costs more because you had to pay for all the recruiting time and costs and onboarding and so on. So I will support the motion to table this to next week and give staff an opportunity to come back with answers to all the miscellaneous questions that arose through the creation of your motion.
Mr. CFO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you do table the motion, we'd like an additional motion on what exactly you'd want to make sure there's committee support, because it's not a simple ask.
This is true. Yes, Member Curtis.
Well, thank you. I would just, like to piggyback on what Councilor Nordyke said. We don't even know what the budget impact this is. How much money are we talking about? Is it 200,000? Is it 50? Is it what? And I mean, I was management with the state of Oregon, and I had to take furloughs before unionized staff, other staff did, and I get that. But we're talking about the general fund is where we have issues primarily, and to just single out those managers and supervisors that are generally funded in a city where everybody works together, for the city, I think is very problematic. But we'd have to have those details before we could vote on this. I mean, yeah.
Thank you, Member Curtis. Member Hoy, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. It was just, I guess, a clarification for the motion itself. Member Cohen, you ended with for fiscal year 2024. Should that have a limit, like for a term of 1 year, or was the intention to have it continue and continue and continue? Yeah. Should verbiage be like that be added to that motion then? So.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
My question was just whether or not something should be added to the motion to put a limit on that.
I would say yes to that. I think what we're going to do, we can go ahead and vote that we can table this. So I'm going to call us to a vote. Those in favor of us tabling this particular motion until next week, all in favor, say aye and show of hands.
Aye.
Those opposed, noes? There are none. Motion passes. So we will revisit this particular motion next week, Member Cohen. And in the meantime, obviously, there's some time that we can work on it to make sure that we can get those questions funneled to the CFO or to City Manager to make sure that we can discuss that, because obviously it impacts the general fund.
He wants a motion to direct him on what to do, because it's going to be substantial work.
This is very true.
That's what he said to us a minute ago.
That's more than an hour, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly is. I would also like to be clear on what the analysis should include, as far as what options you'd like to see. I think there's been questions about different funds, which is, to be clear, we can't differentiate staff between funds, so we can make that clear. But as far as classifications, that sort of thing. So just being clear what information you'd like provided to help you with this decision.
And part of the decision-making process in this is that this work will be longer than an hour for staff. And so any work that's longer than an hour for staff, we need to vote on that, meaning a motion to vote on it, because it impacts the staff. So I give it to the members again. If you want to go deeper with this, I need a motion to move further. If not, it just kind of stays here. Nothing happens. Member Belichick's question on the floor.
Thank you, Chair Brown. So the motion that you're asking for is to collect the information. It's already tabled. It's going to come up next week whether or not we have this additional information. Is that everyone's understanding? Okay.
it will come up next week, but it's not good for it to come up if staff have not done the work behind it. In order to get them to do the work so it can come up next week, we got to have a motion because it's going to take them longer than an hour to do the research.
Yeah, I follow. Thank you.
Mr. City Manager.
Once again, I would suggest that you limit it to the department directors and above, not to the managers.
I have a question.
Hold it for a second, Member Phillips. Vice Chair Nishioka, please go.
Thank you. By doing that, Mr. Staley, would that mean it would be about an hour or less, or would it take more time?
That's a relatively simple calculation for us to add up the salaries of all the managers or all the department directors and the city manager and multiply it by 0.03.
Okay. Vice Chair?
And would that basically get to what you were asking for?
And you know what I appreciate? I appreciate the problem-solving skills that we have. I really do. Late now, I appreciate this. Thank you, Vice Chair. Member Phillips.
I guess like my question is I would like to make a motion as the city manager recommended. So is that a substitute motion or just a new motion?
That's a new motion.
So I move that we do what the city manager just recommended that we do, which is the director level positions and above for just the general fund if possible.
I'll second that.
Motion on the floor, and it was seconded by Vice Chair.
And if I can speak to my motion, my goal and intent is to get staff to do the work to show us what that looks like so that we can have some more information to consider when it comes back to us next week.
Correct. And it's my understanding that this is less than an hour of work. This is a relatively easy process to calculate.
Just to be clear, we will bring back the information related to the department directors regardless of how they're funded, whether it's general fund or a mix, because all of us are funded by a variety of different sources. So we will bring back the information related to our specific salaries and the specific budget impact of freezing our cost of living adjustment.
Before we go to Member Varney, Member Phillips, yes.
I mean, if a motion isn't needed because it's less than an hour of work, I would withdraw the motion.
That's fine. We got the direction that we need, and we can come back with that information.
Perfect. Okay. Before we go to Member Varney, in the back, Mr. CFO, I think Ms. Krishna, the Deputy Soup, did you have a question? Nope, you're good? Okay. Member Varney.
Thank you. My question is just a clarification. Is everyone getting the same, that we're considering here, getting the same COLA, and is that 3%? Is that what you said?
It was 3.
Okay.
So I can speak to what's included in the budget. So currently for executive leadership, there is no COLA included. It's just merit increases. So everyone's on a pay plan. I think it's a 4% range, is that correct? 3 or 4% between steps, and we can bring that detail back.
Because that's not in here, correct?
That detail is not in there, no.
Okay.
But we could certainly bring back for each member of the leadership team what you see and what's built into those salaries.
Okay. Okay. Member Gwynn, was there another question or thought you had? You're good? Was there another thought or question on the floor? Yes, Member Vieira-Brandel.
Yeah, I would just like to clarify and perhaps put Member Cohen on the spot. Is that actually providing the level of clarity that you're originally asking for, though? It sounded as if you were hoping to include other classifications in this, and if the freeze on the COLA for the director levels and above is something that's already happening, is this providing us any new information then?
Good question.
Yes, thank you for the question. I I think that my original intent would be further than COLA. It would include the merit increases, because that's, you get a step increase every year on time of hire. So if you're hired, at least that's what it is in the state. I don't know if it is in city, but if I was hired October 30th, 2023, October 30th, 2024, I will move from step 5 to step 6. So it'd be for the fiscal year 25, they revert back to their step in the fiscal year 24. So it's merit, steps, and COLA. And I just want to point out, folks, I don't want to be the Grinch here, right? The Grinch who stole Christmas. That is not me, right? I'm a public employee. I do hard work. I know my managers do hard work. We are in a cuts budget that is dripping red. I am trying to look under every cushion, try to find every dime there is to help fund our essential services. What I'm asking is for leaders to lead and managers to manage and take one on the chin. I think that that is more than okay for us to ask.
And I would say, Member Cohen, I'm not going to speak on behalf of all the members, but I would love to. When we think of, what you just said, being the Grinch, we know how that story ends, right? The story ends with the Grinch's heart gets bigger and bigger, and everyone ends up working together. So thank you for that analogy, but it's good. And I do want to say that I think we have a place where we can ask, challenging questions. Because the last time I checked, that is why we're here. We are here because we are not only representing our own wards, but it's the city, and we have to ask all these questions, and we have to get our answers. And sometimes those answers are going to may take longer than an hour to do the research. So I appreciate the question. I appreciate the opportunity for us to have this level of civil discourse, because I think it's needed. Any additional thoughts or questions before I make a suggestion? Yes, Member Gwen.
So, Josh, in that analysis, because we're talking about people, would you also be able to include, like, how many people would be affected? Does that make sense?
Yes, that detail will be included.
Thank you.
Any additional thoughts, questions, concerns, or comments? So members, here's my suggestion. It is currently $21.37 for civilians. It'll be $9.37. So $9.37. And so I am going to suggest and recommend that we pick up the next item for the budget manager next week. So we'll begin with you, Ms. Callie, for next week. So with the members, thoughts about that before I ask for a vote? Second that? Great. It has been second. All in favor of us stopping and picking up next week? Okay, great. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Wait, were we going to vote on the motion to table? We already did?
We did that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we did.
We're adjourned.
Yeah, we did that. It was quick, Member Dixon, but we did it.